Welcome to Complete Edition, the podcast between a PlayStation Trophy Hunter and an Xbox Achievement Hunter. This is episode 10 already. I'm your host, Compulsive Nerd, and I am joined by my co-host, AJ. How you doing, AJ?
I'm doing well, thank you. I hope you are too. It's been a while. We've not spoken for slightly longer than usual.
Yes, we're recording late this time on a Monday, which is when I'm going to edit this episode right after we're done, and then I will probably just go ahead and upload it, and then I have to start working on homework because I am overloaded with homework right now. And I kind of fell into a funk where I just didn't want to play games. And that happens to every gamer, where you just fall into a rut and you're like, I'm not feeling it right now, and that sucks because I love games so much that when that happens to me, I don't do anything. I laid in bed and I didn't do anything. I was just like, I don't care that much to watch TV. I don't care to watch movies. But what I did do, and this is going to go into kind of what we're chasing, and that is I watched last Thursday when we finished recording, I watched the showcase with my roommate, the PlayStation showcase. And it was a very exciting showcase to watch. Yes, there was a lot of sequels. Yes, there's a lot of stuff we won't see for a couple of years, but it's just exciting because the games that they showed and the studios that are making those games are very top tier. They're very good. And it made me excited, and my cousin, who is my roommate, got to see God of War and was like, I never played God of War, and I'm like, oh. So we have been playing through God of War 2018 this week. So I haven't really been hunting anything, but I've been watching him play through it as a first time experience, and that is so much fun, dude. It's so much fun to watch someone play this game for the first time and not know really anything.
Stuff like that is so good. It's the same with a movie or a TV show as well. Or games where it's you love something and someone you're close with and you know their taste. They haven't heard of it or played it, and you're just like, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to get all excited again because it's you seeing it for the first time, and you can't replace that moment. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of all the gaming that's been done, because otherwise I haven't been playing games. I've been trying to get homework done, and I don't want to make excuses for this podcast, and I'm not going to, but I am telling you right now, things are starting to look really awesome. And since I finished Life is Strange, I have been reignited again. It's I beat another game, I got another platinum, I'm ready to go. And Kena Bridge of Spirits will release tonight at 11 o'clock. I'm going to play the shit out of that, so that'll probably be the next thing I do. I really want to play Ghost of Tsushima, and I know I keep saying it week after week, but I am going to sit down and finish that. That is a goal of mine. It is written down in my journal. I'm ready to cross through it. Just be boom, I'm done. And then I can start focusing on Deathloop, which is what I'm going to go for. And then Tales of Arise. I'm really excited to play Tales of Arise. And this is just seeing these games. You and I were doing this podcast, and sometimes in this industry, there's a lot of places that are pressured to get a game out before embargo and to play games when they're hyped up. And it's you don't necessarily have to do that. There's people who won't be able to get to those games immediately. And I'm excited. I'm going to get to these games. It's not on launch week. It's not even close to launch, but I'm going to play these games that are from 2021, but just not at the time that they release. And I'm really excited to play them, and I think that people will be able to come back and listen to this later when they finish these games. And I'm not in any hurry to just play the games that are coming out. So whatever's coming out next, after Kena, I'm not going to jump on those. I'm going to play these games that just previously released that I'm behind on.
Yeah, I feel that, for me, gaming slowed down as well. I will say, though, we're going to go in depth about Life is Strange soon, but I think last time we recorded, the game wasn't out yet, or had only just come out, so, you have definitely got, some gaming done in terms of that as well. But, yeah, for me, similar thing where I was basically playing nothing all week, and then on Sunday, I basically did a ton of gaming. I started, first of all, I finished Omno, talked about it last week. It's a chill, easy game, took about 2 hours total. Got 1,000 gamer score in that, followed Macca's guide, and it was great. And then afterwards I started Far Cry 3, so I've got some thoughts about that, Far Cry 3 Classic, and then I also downloaded the Call of Duty beta, so I sort of went from playing nothing to playing quite a bit. Um, so I'll start with Far Cry 3 Classic Edition. So I think it was included with Far Cry 5's Gold Edition or DLC, and it's a pretty bare bones port of Far Cry 3. There's not really any like discernible visual improvements or like I don't know anything added to the game. It's basically just a port from what I can tell. There might be a resolution bump. I'm not sure. It's been so long since I played Far Cry 3 originally on 360. For me, the biggest improvement is that the co-op mode isn't required or included because that mode was pretty bad, I think. So you don't need it for achievements or trophies. And it's weird coming back to Far Cry 3 because the game came out in 2012 and it's so shocking that that's almost an entire decade ago, which kind of makes me feel old. You know, it's like I've seen some people start to call the Xbox 360 and the PS3 as retro consoles, which is such like a weird thing to consider because it's like those systems are ones where I was, you know, like a teenager and then going into like adulthood. And so it's odd to consider anything like that retro or anywhere near retro. But, you know, 10 years, it's a long time.
I'm with you.
You know, 10 years was towards the end of the gen at this point, really. Like 2012, like the consoles came out, 2013, and that's, you know, the Xbox One and PS4. So it's like it was a late 360 game, which is so weird to think about. Like, it doesn't feel like it's 10 years ago going back to Far Cry 3. I feel like Far Cry 3 came out like 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, Far Cry 3 was what really, really got me into the series to a big extent. I played a little of Far Cry 2 and like Far Cry Classic, but I never finished them. Far Cry 3, when it came out, it was a big deal as a game in terms of like Vass, you know, is amazing as a villain. You know, Michael Mando, who's now in like TV and films and stuff because of how you know, in part I'm sure because of how great his performance was in Far Cry 3. They got really interesting villains for that game, and the characters are fantastic, and they still hold up, in my opinion. So I love the characters, I love the story of this game. It was really, like, always it felt like, with a lot of open world games, there were, like, a few that broke through as trying to have, like, really high quality writing and story and more to their world and more going on than just sort of box ticking. You know, it was like I think of like GTA and like the Batman Arkham games, and that's kind of basically it. Maybe Saints Row as well, but Far Cry 3 really came in strong in terms of having a compelling story and good characters, and the actual environment and the world design was really interesting, and yeah, so I'm really enjoying going back to it.
That's what I was gonna ask you. Is like with Far Cry 3. All of these things you're describing, do you still feel that way? Because I went back and played it recently, and I still love the game, and I get the criticism that Voss isn't in it too much, or like he comes out too early or whatever, but I still think that it shows that he was a pawn, and like he was just such a great character that everyone misses him for that last segment instead of making him the main villain, and I just feel like it was all told so well that it didn't bother me, and like I said, I went back to it, and I just still love the game. I still hold it up as like one of the best Far Cries, but a lot of people just disagree wholeheartedly. Like, it's not one of the best. It's not as good as you remember and all that.
Yeah, so my thoughts are sort of mixed on it, honestly. So, you know, I think the story absolutely holds up. And I thought even when Far Cry 3 came out, like, I love Vass, and he is the best villain of the game. But I like, you know, what is it, Buck and Hoyt as well. Like, I like the other villains. I think they're still compelling. I think Vass sort of totally overshadows them, but if he wasn't in the game would still be interesting, which is, you know, a really great achievement for them, essentially. But I think some stuff hasn't aged well. I mean, like, it's got that, like, graphics thing where you sort of, when games are new and you play them, you're sort of like, oh, this is the best I've ever seen, or this is among the best I've ever seen, or whatever. Like, it looks, when everything around it looks similar at the time it comes out, you sort of, it just looks better to you. Whereas now going back, you're like, oh, this game doesn't look that great. Like, it looks okay, but it looks, you know, blurry, and you know, a lower resolution, and the buildings look like they lack detail, and all of this stuff. And that's just, a symptom of the time. There's nothing they can do about that really, unless they fully remastered it. But I think when Far Cry 3 came out, it was really impressive to me, and some of it has faded. Like, I remember when Far Cry 3 came out, the actual open world and the scale of it, like when you climb the towers and all of that, and I love how when you climb the towers, by the way, you have that, like, there's that swaying effect on your aim, so it's like your character's actually swaying when the camera's swaying, and that's a really cool effect of like simulating the idea of having vertigo as the player and as the character. And yeah, you can see off into the horizon, and I remember it was really impressive at the time, and it's less impressive now, obviously. But I still think it does a good job, and I think the game was released as well in a sweet spot of timing, because as open world games evolved, a lot of developers kept chasing this idea of like bigger and bigger worlds with more and more side activities that are sometimes pretty, meaningless and pointless. And I think Ubisoft is guilty of this as well, in terms of like, it feels like whenever a game comes out that's open world, there's like developer interviews where they're like, oh, it's 15 times bigger, it's 3 times bigger, I mean, even Fallout 76, they were talking about it being like 4 times bigger over at Bethesda, and all of this, and it's like that's not really what I want at this point. Like yeah, you can make huge worlds, but I feel like I'm over it now. Like yeah, I understand you could, No Man's Sky has what, like billions of planets or whatever, but if they're all empty, like who cares, right? Like it doesn't get me in the way it used to. And Far Cry 3 was sort of released at that point where the size of the world is impressive, and you can definitely get overwhelmed with the side stuff, but it still feels manageable. It's still got that balance of like, there's only like 18 towers, and there's like, I don't know, like 20 or 30 outposts to, conquer, and then that's it, right? Like that's the game. And that just feels so much more manageable, and I prefer that than the like endless checklists of pointless stuff. And it's the same with the side activities. There's a lot of it that you can skip, and there's like more than enough XP to go around as well. And I really appreciate that balance in terms of the design, because I think a lot of games get it wrong. And Far Cry 3, partially it's probably because of technical limitations that they didn't go crazier, but I kind of appreciate it because I'm like, you had like a good, like manageably sized game to get through.
I agree with you. And speaking of like, in terms of the size of the game and things to do in the game, that has a great list. I would say there's like this, I don't know if I'd consider it RNG, but like some of the hunting stuff for the completion is a little bit tedious and aggravating at times. But what I was going to say was like, there's a ton of collectibles in the game, an ungodly amount. But to get the completion, you do not need to do all of them. There's like a handful that you have to do, and then it's like, oh, you did that many, you're good. You're good. You don't need to collect all 500 of these.
Yeah, you have to get, I think, 60 of 120 relics, and then you have to get, I think, all the memory cards and all the letters, but there's a lot less of those.
Like 20.
And also, yeah, a lot of the memory cards are in like the outposts that you get, or at least one of them was that I've got so far. And then also you can buy in the game, you can buy maps that will literally tell you where every single collectible is. Like it just says on the map, and sometimes they're underground and it's, difficult to get to them. They're at like a different altitude and that's awkward, but for the most part it just tells you where everything is, which is really great. It's not a total nightmare in terms of collectibles. You're right about the list as well. There's some like the miscellaneous achievements are pretty fun as well. Like there's one to like get a death from above from like a zip line or like a glider, and then there's one to shoot someone with a bow and arrow from 70 meters away. I did that yesterday, and I managed to do it from like putting a waypoint on the map, and then it would like where the enemy is stood, and so then the waypoint distance told me like how far away I had to go to make sure he's 70 meters, and that worked amazingly. And there's like a marksman sight for the bow that like tells you like where the arrow drop is going to be, and so that's great as well. And you can even get explosive arrows later, I think, so you can make it even easier. So it's like all the achievements are manageable. The miscellaneous stuff is fun. Yeah, it's a great game. It holds up pretty well so far. The gameplay side, gameplay and graphics hold up less well, I'd say. I think the shooting in Far Cry 3 isn't great. I think it's okay at best. I think the aiming feels a little odd, a little less precise than like, very modern like Call of Duty and Halo and Doom and all of these games, right? And that's forgivable to an extent as well because Far Cry is trying to be an open world game. It's trying to do a lot more things. With a game like Doom, it's like the whole point is those like shooting galleries, right? Whereas Far Cry is doing like lots of other dynamic things with the environment and stuff. So there'll be less time and consideration put into making the shooting mechanics feel as good, essentially. But some of that hasn't held up brilliantly. I think that as well, there's sometimes where I've got like a silenced sniper rifle, and sometimes you'll shoot an enemy and you'll get like no feedback. Like you never get hit markers, and then you don't get like a blood spatter either. And the enemies also, they don't seem to have animations for like sometimes when you hit them, they don't animate like they've been hit in the chest. They just sort of keep walking, and sometimes they'll say like, I've been hit, and sometimes they won't say it because of how like the dialogue is queuing or whatever. Like sometimes you'll hit them, won't kill them, and then it'll be like, I'm going to raise the alarm or something instead of like the I've been hit. So sometimes you sort of like, because the aiming is a bit rough, you're like, did I miss that guy or did I hit him and wound him or like what happened? Whereas it feels like most games now, so much work has been done for even without like hit markers, just like very animation heavy games where it's like characters respond to like if you shoot them in the leg or if you shoot them in like the foot or like the chest, they like have like unique animations to do. And in this game it feels a bit rough in the sense that that type of thing isn't always happening, so it can be a bit difficult to play in that sense, but the game is still very forgiving. I like that you can use rocks to distract people and you can use the camera to tag people, and the stuff with the hunting where you can get like wall hacks essentially for the animals, like you can see them. It is so useful because of the fact that the map markers for the animals isn't always accurate because the animals are dynamically moving across the world, which is, in itself impressive as well. So yeah, it's a great game. I get both sides of it, right? Like you say about some people think it's aged quite a bit. I think it has aged, but I think it's still a banger. Like it's still a classic, and it's in contention for like one of the best games in the series. And so much of that is the fact that with the story and the characters, you're not going to get that in any of the other games, like to that level. So, they definitely got on a good streak with like Far Cry 3, 4, 5 in terms of the villains, but they're always trying to top VAS ultimately.
Yeah, and here's hoping that 6 is good, because they really don't need to try to do what they did with 3 in terms of storytelling. They don't need a like top boss. What they need to do is tell a good story with 2 good characters, a good villain and a good protagonist, because it seems like the other protagonists kind of suck now. And then when they nail that, then move on and just make the open world very similar to Far Cry 3, where it's not overly large and like full of shit to do, and just like focus it down. Focus on 15 to 20 outposts and give us some stuff to do in the open world, and like that's it. Don't try to give us fucking 90 hours of stuff. We don't need it. I don't think
Right.
Like that's always been the problem with the new ones. It's like, stop doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, in terms of like making a game, like you want your best content to be most of the content, right? Ideally, like you don't want 20 hours of gold and then like 60 hours of like mediocre or like bad activities to do. And it seems like a lot of games don't understand that. And I understand, these companies, they want you to spend more time in each game. Like they want you to, a game to be like the only game you're playing for a month. So then, you're talking about it and you're maybe getting the DLC and the microtransactions. Like I understand the the business side of it, but it just seems like it hurts the game overall to overstuff it with stuff and try and like focus on that like player retention. And yeah, I was thinking in terms of Far Cry 6, I probably have enough time to complete Far Cry 3 and then Far Cry 5 because I haven't finished Far Cry 5 before Far Cry 6 comes out, but I think I'm not going to do it. Like I'm not going to aim to do that because I don't really want to rush through Far Cry 3. I think Far Cry is a pretty good game to have like alongside another game in terms of especially Far Cry 3, right? Because I've already beaten it before, like I already know the story, I already know what it plays like. I don't need to sort of binge through it. And then also I think if I did that, like if I rush through 3 and then rush through 5 and get all the achievements in both before Far Cry 6, I think it's possible, but I think I'd be so burned out by Far Cry and by like Ubisoft open world games that like I'd do it in time for Far Cry 6 and then I'd be like, now I don't even want to play Far Cry 6 because or if I did force myself to play it, I'd probably not enjoy it as much. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably finish Far Cry 3 and then think about if I want to go to Far Cry 5 and, you know, maybe play a different game from a different series instead and not worry about like catching the release date of Far Cry 6. Just, you know, take it at my own pace because, you know, there's plenty of games out there releasing. It's like you said, right, about like you know, for you like Deathloop and Tales and Kenna and all this, right? Like it's so hard to keep up and, you know, if I was like the biggest Far Cry fan in the world, then like yeah, it'd be worth it, but I like the games, you know. I think Far Cry 3 is great and the others are at least good. So I'm looking forward to 6, but I'm not like I don't have to be like the first guy playing it.
I might wait with you. I don't know. I want to be part of the conversation in the Discord. That's about the only reason that I want to get it early. But if I just wait like a month or two, and then a sale hits and I can get the gold edition just like the price of the normal, so that I can get everything that comes with it, that'd be awesome. But
Yeah, I mean
don't
that's
know.
another factor, right? Ubisoft games go on sale really, really fast.
So fast.
You can wait. I think for that, what is it? The game that everyone compares to Breath of the Wild, Immortals: Phoenix Rising. That's
Yes.
the one. Yeah, that game. I think that game was out for like a week and then it went on sale. I think that was the fastest I've seen from Ubisoft. Like that was like Ubisoft are always fast, but that was like even faster than fast. It was ridiculous. It was out for like the game was out for like 5 days and they'd already like sliced like 25% off the asking price.
Yeah, and I don't understand that because as you see with a lot of people who play it, they think that's like Ubisoft's best game in years. And I disagree with that. I don't think it's that great. I think that a lot of the jokes fell flat in that game, but that's a whole another can of worms I will get into. But the point is like people like that game and it's one of the most polished games Ubisoft has released. So it's not like, oh, we have to put this out and then it's buggy as shit. Maybe we'll put it on sale so that because it's not worth that money. And then this one is so good, so polished, and then goes ahead and just goes on sales immediately. It's like ass backwards. You know what I mean? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely get that. I mean, it's like it's tough. I mean, I think for that game, I need to play Immortals: Phoenix Rising, but it's like I admire Ubisoft like greenlighting something different, even if it does seem a bit shameless in some ways. Just having a new IP, I mean, it's something that you've always got to celebrate in terms of the industry. But I don't know what Ubisoft's doing with their pricing model. I mean, it feels like they should, you know, it feels like the next thing they're going to do is like preemptively cut the price of their games. Like it's crazy. I remember at Christmas as well. It was shortly after Valhalla and Watch Dogs Legion released because they had that problem where they planned games and then COVID hit and they like all got delayed into like the same timing window. So then you had like Christmas like shortly after the games had come out and they were already on a huge sale. So yeah, but Far Cry 3, you know, great game. Far Cry 6, it's looking good to me. Like everything I've seen looks interesting and looks different enough. So I definitely do want to get around to it, but I'm like, I'm gonna do 3 first, then I'm probably gonna do 5. So, and since I'm not gonna rush, it's probably not coming right away.
Yes. again, I'm very tempted to wait and do it at the same time you do. That way we both finish it and then we can do like a spoiler cast on it, or just talk about our feelings on it. But do you have any more games to talk about?
Oh yeah, I do. So my final game is the Call of Duty Vanguard open beta, which I played on Sunday and then I played a little today as well. And I feel bad because I've played about 3 hours, I think, so I kind of don't have comprehensive thoughts on it. But I think it's pretty bad. Is my take.
Wow.
I think it kind of sucks. It's so there's a few things wrong with it. Like I think the maps aren't as terrible as I first thought they were. Although it has this weird thing where you can choose the gameplay pacing, which means you choose like how many people are on the map. Like you can choose whether to play in like different game modes, but the maps seem to be in all the game modes based on like the amount of players. That it's like called you can play in like tactical mode or assault mode or blitz mode, and then each mode is like it'll be like 6v6 or like 10v10 or like 18v18 or something, or like 16v16. But it doesn't seem to change the maps for that. So it's like you have a map, and I can't tell whether the map was designed for the like middle amount of players or the low amount of players or the big amount of players, or if it was designed for any amount of players. Like it doesn't make sense to me, because usually when you make a map, you're going to like think like, oh, this is going to be like a 6v6 map or something in most games. Whereas in this, I played this like massive map, or like it was like a medium to large size map where you're in like a red square, or the red square, I guess. And then in Moscow by the presumably. But then it would have like these really long sight lines and this really huge building, and I was playing it in a tactical mode that the game just like put me in, and it was like 6v6 or something, and you spend most of the game not being able to find anyone. So I don't know what they're thinking with stuff like that. And then some of the perks seem pretty stupid. The attachment system is really annoying. There's like these ammo mods you can put on your guns that seem interesting, but they have no downside, and basically one of them is better than all the others. So why would you use anything else? Like and there's also no limit on attachments. Like you can just put 10 attachments on your gun, like one from each attachment slot. So there's stuff like that that just doesn't make sense. Also, I'm definitely ranting, but the game's multiplayer doesn't have like it's set in World War II, but it doesn't have allies versus Axis. It's just like everyone is allies. So like no matter which side you're on, you're always playing as like Americans and British, basically. Like it's like you're just like it's like Americans and British versus Americans and British, instead of like Americans and British and French versus like Japanese and like Japanese and Germans, Nazis and all of that. Like it's just the two sides are basically the same, and that means they look the same as well. Like all the characters look the same. So if you're shooting at an enemy, they look the same as your teammate. It's just they have like a red dot above them instead of a green dot or a blue dot. And so it's like, why would they make a World War II game and then have only one side playable in the game? It just doesn't make sense. It's like, why even use that setting if you're not going to commit to it? And it's even more confusing because on some of the maps they have Nazi iconography. Like they have like, the Iron Cross and their symbols and the SS and all of that. Like they have that stuff in the maps. So they're not like necessarily shying away from it in that sense. But they won't let you play as them, and they won't let like it be like this team versus the other team. They're just like everyone's one team split in half, and it makes no sense. Like why would Americans and Brits be like shooting each other? Like it's just totally it's stupid for like historical reasons, but it's even worse for gameplay reasons, because you can't even, if you play hardcore, which I don't think there are any hardcore modes in the beta, in hardcore there's no HUD, so you won't even see if the person you're shooting at is like a teammate or an enemy, and you can just kill them because friendly fire's on. So Yeah, I think that's really dumb. There's just as I play more, there's like more stuff that's stupid. It takes a long time to draw your weapon from sprinting. It's called sprint out time, and it takes too long, so it seems to encourage playing it quite slowly. You can mount your weapons on walls and like peek around corners with your weapon mounted on a wall or on some cover, and it makes your weapon really accurate. And I hate that because it encourages camping. There's even a perk that makes it so you take less damage when you're crouched or prone, which is like, why would you encourage that playstyle? It seems to be related to explosive damage, I think, although the description isn't really clear if it's only explosive damage or if it's all damage. So there's just like tons of things that I think are problems, and then it doesn't run very well as well. I'm playing it
Whoa.
on Xbox Series X, which is meant to be like most powerful console, and sometimes the game just goes to like 5 FPS for no reason seemingly. Sometimes it happens in the menus, sometimes it happens in gameplay. The game can crash. The game can like corrupt your Xbox as well. I've seen that someone had to factory reset their Xbox after playing it. I know from a couple of friends I talked to who play on Xbox, they've had the exact same experience with the frame rate and the crashing. So, if they can't get it to run on Series X, like what are they doing? There's no excuses for that. If I was playing it on, a base Xbox One, part of it I'd be like, oh, okay, that's some of that's my bad. But yeah, so there's a lot of issues. I mean, I think the weapon balancing is bad as well. I think the hipfire accuracy sucks. For some reason, the STG seems to have better hipfire accuracy, but worse recoil than an MP40, which doesn't seem to make much sense to me. And then, yeah, I mean, the hipfire is terrible as well, which is really bad because, like I said, if you sprint and try and pull your weapon out, it takes a really long time in this game. So that, again, encourages this, like, slow play style of, like, camping and like moving forward while you're aiming down sights. And in my experience, that always makes a weaker COD game. Like COD is, it's not meant to be like Rainbow Six. It's not meant to be even like Halo. Really, it's like you're supposed to be taking gunfights and running around like a maniac in those games, and they're at their most fun when you go to that playstyle. It's a very arcadey game, but yeah, so not enjoying it that much. I think I hope the campaign's better, and I hope the zombies is better, and I'll wait for the full release as well. I've played every COD game upon release, I'm pretty sure. So except for like Call of Duty 1 and 2. So yeah, I'll play it again, but I'm not. I can't see myself playing the multiplayer for very long. Like I'll probably play for like a few days, get like a good amount of hours in, and then if I'm still not feeling it, then that's it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I don't play Call of Duty much anymore. I definitely don't play multiplayer. Definitely hard out on that. But it's crazy how big the games are getting, and I'm just like not gonna waste the space at all to play stuff like that. And I mean, they are like some of the biggest budget games, but I just can't find interest in them anymore. And especially when you describe like all the problems you're having, it's like, damn, dude, like they have infinite money. They're like the best selling game every year, so they need to figure that shit out like quickly.
Yeah, I will say that since Modern Warfare, their engine seems like, and their technical stuff, it does seem very ambitious. Like the games look beautiful, and the animations on like the weapons and everything, it all looks great. Like it's all technically really impressive, and I think that like they're still probably getting used to that new engine, although it's been about 3 years, so you'd think they'd be used to it by now. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make excuses for them, but I can understand that they are trying to push the technology to some extent, and so that's probably why the issues are coming up. But it's still, I think every Call of Duty game runs at 60 FPS as well. So, and I remember like with Black Ops Cold War, it ran at 60 with ray tracing. So I understand they are at least being ambitious. Like that would be the nightmare scenario, that like the games are like super outdated technically and then also run terribly. Like that would be a disaster, but at least they've got sort of one side of the equation sorted out in terms of that stuff.
All right. Well, that seems like that's it for your the games you've been playing, and that means we're going to transition to the topic on the table, which is Life is Strange True Colors, and we'll start off I'm gonna give my general thoughts, and then we'll go into spoilers kind of later. But we'll mention it before we go into it. But like I was saying when we talked about what we were chasing, I did platinum the game. It was very easy. I mean, you were talking about the chapter select and how easy it was to do it, and I mean, it took like 30 minutes, dude. I was in and out. That it was so easy, and like they showed each like little segment of the chapter that could be replayable, and then like the parts that are in it that you need, and knocked it out real quick. But this game, like I was saying, reignited me. And what was going on was I've been like struggling. My mental health has not been the strongest ever since school started. I'm just like overwhelmed with everything, and my life is super busy, and I'm just like, I just want to play games. I do. I just want to play games. And then I'm not playing games. I'm laying down. I'm like, oh, I have so much homework to do. I have things to do. And I'm not going to say that this game cured me, but it's like, it helped a lot. Like, once the game made me cry a couple times, and I didn't know that I needed to cry, but I needed to cry. And like, this game brought that out of me, brought my like emotions back up to like a good level, and I was like, let's go. Like, I'm motivated to do things. And it's weird how being sad and then being more sad, you can be lifted out by things like that. And like I was saying, I just like I fell out, and it rarely happens to me where I fall out of games. And this game just brought me back up, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I'm so happy that this game came out, because for me, I think that Alex might be a better character than Max. Like, I
was
love playing as Alex. Like, just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping after that like emotional story you were gonna go, oh, 2 out of 10, crap game.
Dude, terrible. I hated it. It was awful. I was crying not because the game was sad, but because it was sad that the game sucks. No, not anything like that. I definitely loved it. It's high on my list. I'm big narrative over gameplay, and this game has so much narrative and so much character to it, and I immersed myself in that world and in that town. Oh my god, Haven is a great place to be.
Yeah, so I gave a lot of non-spoiler thoughts last week, so I won't go back over them. But I think the game is probably like a 6 out of 10 to me, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not someone who inflates my review scores to go with like Game Critics or like the Metacritic stuff where everything has to be an 8 out of 10 to be good. But so for me, it was worthwhile. It was good, and I said before as well how I didn't like the original Life is Strange. I wasn't even interested in Life is Strange 2. So I didn't like this series, and I like this game, and I'm not, ashamed to say that I like this game. I'm not, there's no embarrassment or like, oh, I shouldn't have liked it, but I do like it. No, I like this game. This game's a good game. So, and if you like the previous ones, like, I think you're gonna love this game. So, it's a complete success in that sense. Like, I'm not the target audience. I'm not the Life is Strange guy. I was very much the anti Life is Strange guy. So the fact that it works on me and that I think it's a good story with great characters, the developers have done an amazing job. I think in terms of, I mean, this is kind of a soft spoiler, but I said it last week as well. I think the decisions don't matter as much as I'd want. And I think as well, the story gets a bit formulaic in parts. I mean, we'd have to go into spoilers to talk about exactly what I mean by that, but I don't know if me saying it seems to follow a bit of a formula that's similar to the first game. I assume you might already know what I mean there.
Maybe. I'm not really sure. I can't wait to talk about it. We are going to talk about it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll leave it there for now. But in terms of, yeah, it achieved so much in the sense of it not being my type of game, but still being a good time. And in terms of the characters, almost all of them worked for me. There wasn't like a single pointless character or a single character where I'm like, oh, why are they in the game, or a character where the voice acting was bad. Like, everything was executed so well. I think the pacing is a bit slow, but it serves the characters, and the characters deliver. That's what's really important in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right with you from 2. I still like 2, but they really lost their way. Like I didn't feel for those characters near as much as I did for Life is Strange, one Before the Storm, and now True Colors. So two is just this lone game that just kind of exists, and it's like I will never replay that one. I really won't. I just didn't care about those characters like I do. And the thing is, like, I have a brother, so I really should have connected to those characters a lot more. And I think that's what carried me through the game, was having a brother and just kind of knowing that kind of relationship. But it still isn't strong. It's not strong like these other ones are. I don't know if it, and I'm not trying to be political, but it could have been because it seemed more like a political message instead of an emotional everybody message. Does that make sense? Like, this one is about love and empathy, and number two is just like very, very political. It seems like everybody in the world is racist and everyone is
Yeah.
against them, and it's like this doesn't seem real. It seems very much bubble like. And
Yeah, the from the clips I've seen of that game, a lot of the characters are like caricatures. Like they're like, oh, this is typical like Trump Republican stuff,
yeah,
but it's like it's not written by someone who's actually spoken to a lot of those people and like understands like who they are. Like there's no empathy, like this game or sympathy to make them, realistic. It's just sort of
it's
it
the
just
char-
sort of came across as mean spirited.
it really did, and that's why I just think it's like a game that just is not replayable. It doesn't feel genuine. It just feels very like everyone's attacked, and it's just like it's not a comfortable feeling to play that game. And I'm not saying any Life is Strange is comfortable, because they are so like deep and emotional. So it's not comfortable to be feeling sadness and anxiety and the things that are going on in those games. But that one just stands alone as one that just didn't hit, and the rest have. And I'm so glad that it's back to this like beautiful, amazing. And dude, I want to talk about the technology, because this game looks great. It just sucks that it's in 30 frames per second. I hope someday they patch it so that it's 60, because like there's no reason for it not to be. And they said it's like a artistic decision, but it's still like
Oh no.
you could have put it like the cutscenes in 30 frames per second. That doesn't bother me. Honestly, when the cutscenes were happening, that didn't bother me. Whenever I get into the open world and I turn the camera and like I'm walking around, I'm like, oh, I'm nauseous. I'm nauseous. Let me see this in a beautiful 60 frames per second, please. Next time. I don't know how hard that is to do technologically, because, I'm not a game designer, but I just can't imagine why they can't focus the smaller scenes where you're not in control in 30 frames per second, and then the scenes where you're in control 60 frames, like switch back and forth, because like I said, it would look much better. It could be a thing on the engine too, so who knows. But
I agree. The art style looks really vibrant, and I love the colors. I mean, it's still like there's definitely games that are more colorful now than when all the games were like gray and brown. But it's still really nice to see a game that has so many bright colors and contrasting colors like this game does in terms of the streets and of Haven Springs. Like it's just such like a nice place to just be in. But yeah, I mean, 60 FPS. It should have a 60 FPS mode. I mean, I will say that the movement speed of your character is so slow that it's kind of not too bad. You don't have to whip the camera around quickly or anything, so it's less bad than it could be. But yeah, it's still. I don't know why they can't have a 60 mode.
yeah, and speaking of that, when I was in control, I never touched the right stick. I was just walking around using the left, and I let the camera do its own thing, because when it moves slower and it's not me looking around, like, because the camera automatically adjusts to where you're turning, and so if you just don't touch the right stick and you just like walk around, it focuses on where you're going. That's what I did, because otherwise, like, unless I needed to look around specifically, like while I was searching, if you know what I'm talking about, like searching without spoilers, but like when I was searching, I would use the camera, but then whenever I was walking, I would not touch the camera. I would just be like, it's just focused on where I'm going, and that's all that I need. But what do you say we get into spoilers? Because I think that's all that I had to say about the general
Yeah,
thoughts.
sure. I guess if we go into spoilers, I can be more explicit about what I said earlier about one of my criticisms with the game. So yeah, spoilers from here on, you know, if you don't want to hear spoilers, get out or skip ahead or whatever.
Yes, I will.
Um,
I'll put timestamps around these parts so that people can just go around this.
yeah, so what I meant about the game being a bit formulaic in its story to some extent is, the idea of like in the first Life is Strange, in so or in this Life is Strange, in episode 4 you find out that a character who was allegedly good is bad, and the original Life is Strange hits the same notes with, the photography teacher guy, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so it kind of follows a very very similar story progression in terms of, the character that you don't suspect that is there from the start. He's a bad guy and he's part of this mystery and part of this scheme, and he betrays you and captures you, or he, shoots you down a big mine shaft in this game instead of capturing you, but it's, basically the same thing. Um, and I thought that was maybe a little disappointing. I mean, it's only made disappointing by the fact that the first game in the series also did it, right? Like, I think the way this game does it, if you've not played any other Life is Strange game, I think the way it's executed here is really good. Like, I think what they've done is great. And so, but it's just sort of unfortunate that it's not wholly original and kind of feels like it's almost following a template. So I think, yeah, it's like, because I mean, if we yeah, I don't know if we want to talk about this now, but if in terms of Jed, I quite liked the twist on its own. I thought it surprised me. I didn't predict it, and I thought it also made sense because of the context of him like not liking being talked about as a hero. It's like, oh, so that's why, it all makes sense, and it fit together quite well. So I think the narrative stuff works really well in terms of the execution, and that's the trend for this game. Like, it's not that ambitious sometimes. It's quite slow paced. It hits a lot of similar notes that the previous Life is Strange, especially the first one, hits, and so all of that is kind of stopping it from being like a masterpiece or like revolutionary. But in terms of what they aim to do, they execute on it so well, and the characters back it up so well that it still rises way above a lot of other games and a lot of other stories.
Dude, that's so interesting. I did not even pick up on that at all. I didn't even think about the teacher and Jed and how the similarities there. When that stuff happened, I mean, I was completely took off guard. I really did think he was going to show us what was in the mines. Like, I really thought he knew, and like he was holding it down because Typhon was like on his back too. And like, I did not see it coming at all. Like, he was just such a good guy, and that's the difference between Life is Strange 1 and this. Is like, in Life is Strange 1, the teacher's like barely in each episode. He's in it for like 20 seconds an episode until the very end. And it's just like, oh, what? The character who was like not in it at all is now, the bad
Yeah,
guy? But this one was like, he's in the whole thing. He literally helps you out. He leaves you notes. Like, I was reading text messages from him. He was involved the entire time. And like, he's leaving letters under your door. It just seemed like he was just genuinely great. And not only that, but Ryan is also a great character, and it's his dad, so it's just like, oh, they're just a wholesome, great family that just is in this town. And like, whenever that twist came, and I think that they did like a sound effect with like a gun like loading, and before they like even showed it, and that was like the twist, and I was like, no, are you fucking kidding me? And then like, I actually, at the moment where Alex is shot, I thought she was dead. I was like, who are we gonna play as? I was like, what did they just do? This is like incredible. But then she wakes up and I'm like, I kind of wish she would have gone, and then it would have been like me having to process that I just lost a character that I was in love with from the beginning. And
yeah,
like, that whole mineshaft thing was just a little bit too much plot armor because it was just so far down. It was so far down. I'm like, dude, she would have been so dead.
yeah, I completely agree. I said the execution was amazing, but then I'm like, actually, with that kind of sucks because, yeah, she got like shot, and then the shot like knocked her down like a giant mine shaft, and she like bounced off a bunch of wood that's like jutting out, and then ends up like all the way down there, also in like pitch darkness. Like, it's like there's no way she's getting out of there. Like,
Yeah.
there's it's
It's
not
Life is Strange
happening.
though. They got to do something. And I was really betrayed by that. And then let's just go ahead and discuss this part because we're just in the middle of it. But did you forgive Jed?
No.
Oh, dude, I did. And like seeing how many players did forgive Jed was so interesting because I think that's like the whole point of this game is, you were talking about how decisions don't really matter much, but I think that's not the point of this one. They said it over and over. The point of this game is the power of love and empathy and to feel for someone. And when Alex gives a speech about everything he's feeling, I'm like, I get it. He got buried in his own lie because he felt guilty and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to forgive this guy because no one else will. And being able to feel that connection and like do that, it every single chapter has stuff like that where you'll meet an asshole or you'll have a bad interaction and then you get that choice. And it's like, do you want to just completely cut yourself off from the emotion of feeling for them, or do you want to feel for them and try to make them better? And like you said, it doesn't seem like choices have that much weight, but if you look at the end and like the world statistics, majority of the decisions are like you were empathetic, like the player base was empathetic to the player.
Yeah,
to the
can I interrupt you?
Oh, absolutely.
Just because I totally disagree. Like I don't think so. I think first of all, it's important. I mean, the writers may feel that way. You may feel that way. It doesn't really affect me in that sense. I think that there's a difference between empathy and forgiveness. I think that's the first thing, right? Is that you can understand someone and you can understand why they are the way they are and like how they ended up here. But that's different from saying like, oh, but that makes your actions justified and like totally valid, right? Like there's a gap between those two things. They're not the same thing. And so I think that like for me, it's like I felt like the game was trying to steer me into forgiving him, but I'm also like this dude like tried to murder like he covered up the death of helped cover up and wanted to cover up the death of Gabe, and then also he's like tried to murder like basically like a teenager or a young adult.
Yeah, I think she's
That's
20. But
okay, yeah, so a young adult. I mean that's and I mean she could even be the love interest of like his son, right, as well. So it's like that's like way too many levels of like fucked up to just be like, yeah, no, I get it, dude. You know what I mean? Like it's like that's so unreasonable. Like that's such an unreasonable thing to do to someone, like to literally shoot them into a giant fucking mine shaft in the hopes of murdering them, that it's like I can't do you a solid there. Like I can't help you out. Like there's some things that are they're just way too far to be just forgiven. Like I get it. I can have the empathy, I can have the understanding, but it doesn't mean that you get the forgiveness from that.
Well
so
said.
I don't necessarily see it in the same way.
Very well said, dude. Like I never thought about it like that, but for me it just like being swept up in the moment is like, and what happens whenever you choose to not forgive him? Like what happens? Does he fall down and cry still?
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
Okay.
he basically does the same thing. I think that as well, like I will say from your perspective, right? Like I'm going to, tell the other side of my own argument that when you play a game, like essentially when I got that decision, it was like I was, like you said about being in the moment, I essentially got like snapped out of the moment, and I was like, what would I think and what would I choose in real life? Because when I like make decisions in games, it's sometimes cool to be like, I'm not gonna you can make decisions from like, you can either go like, I'm gonna be a good guy or I'm gonna be a bad guy, and then you can also go, I'm gonna be the character, right? Like I'm gonna be Alex Chen, and that's gonna be what I base the decisions off of, like what I think she would do, what I think she would think. And then there's the other perspective of, I'm gonna make decisions based on what I would do if I was really in that situation. And so I think, because that was my mindset towards the decisions. Also, I think the other element of my decisions is like, what's the most interesting and like funny and fun as well. I quite like that angle. But for that decision, it was like I was essentially snapped out of the game, in the sense of I was like, if this was real life and this happened to me or this happened to someone, Like there is no way that 0% chance you would ever forgive him. Like that it would like, and so I agree with you in a sense of like if you are swept in the moment and if you're like fully like Alex, right? Like if you're like full empathy and like taking emotions from people and like almost understanding their perspective so well that it replaces your own perspective, right? Like it
Yeah.
replaces even yourself, then I can understand it, and that's why I think there's a chance that that's what like the writers are going for as well. But in terms of me, I'm like, that if this was real life, there's no way anyone with like is gonna just be like, yeah, okay,
It's
cool.
true. There's no way I would do that if I was not feeling what the person was feeling. I would be like, fuck this guy, put him in jail. He has done terrible things, but just because of what Alex can do, I was connected in that moment. That's so interesting that you gave both sides of that argument, cuz like for me, once you argued, I was like, "Man, how do you forgive him?" And it's because she felt for what he was feeling and finally was able to release that for him, which is nice cuz with a lot of her powers and being able to absorb things. Dude, I thought that shit was going to come back so hard later. Like she was going to kill someone or like blow up when I was taking other people's emotions. I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, it all depends on essentially if you take the story as like these are characters in a story and I'm going to like be the character, or if you're like these are characters in a story but the story is semi-realistic and I'm going to approach it as though it's like a real thing. So I think that's like the difference, if you get what I mean. That's how I see it anyway.
All right. Well, I say we go back because we just hit the big stuff first, but let's go back to and go chapter by chapter. I think it'll be really fun to talk about our decisions, dude. And like I said, there's a couple decisions that are, in terms of the entire player base, they're very close. There's very few that are very close. Most of them are very drastically. Most people did this. Most people did not do that, and I think that's because that was the writer's intent. Again, but to me, it spoke about how like players are supposed to be feeling what the power of love and empathy, just like the whole theme of the game. And so that made me feel good. Like I was choosing whatever other people were feeling and choose like at that moment. But there are definitely times where I definitely didn't. Like, for example, let's go ahead and just start with chapter 1. We don't need to talk about, you know.
Oh, I need to say about chapter 1 specifically. Last week I said about that Square Enix's marketing for this game spoils the game too much. And what I meant with that was the marketing spoils Gabe's death. The
Did it
trailers
really?
that they showed at conferences, it's like oh, she's the whole town's dealing with his death, like Gabe's death, and like, oh, what are you gonna do? And so that really hurt chapter 1 for me
Damn.
because chapter 1 is like 2 to 3 hours long, and I knew from the moment I started, I'm like, oh, he dies, like this guy dies. And so like all
Dude.
this stuff about building my relationship with him, it's like it's all pointless because he's gonna die. And
God.
all of this is to like tug at my heartstrings as well. Like I already know what everything that's going on. And then I was thinking like, oh, he's gonna die in like 10 minutes or like 30 minutes. But like no, it's the entire chapter is building up to his death. And it's framed like the scene where he dies is meant to be surprising as well in a sense. Like it wasn't completely obvious. Like you don't know if anyone's gonna die and you don't know which character specifically is gonna die because it could be a few different characters at that point. It's kind of yeah, it really sucks that they did that. Like, I don't know why. It actually kind of makes me a bit angry because it's like they ruined their own story. Like that chapter of the story, they kind of ruined it for people in
Dude,
in a way, or at
I'm
least
angry
hurt it.
with you. This is why I don't watch things that I know I'm gonna play. Like I just don't, and I didn't do it. As soon as I saw Life is Strange, True Colors, and Alex, and like they're like the power of love and empathy, I was out. I took my headset off. I'm like, okay, I know I'm gonna play that game. I don't need to see anymore. Like I'm a huge Life is Strange fan. I'm not gonna play, or I'm not gonna watch anymore. And I didn't have that spoiled for me. So I'm just like, okay, I think I'm just gonna be in this town. I'm gonna be helping people out. It's gonna be like me and Gabe, and we're trying to figure out her powers, kind of like Chloe and Max. And then he gets hit, and I mean, my breath was straight up taken away. And then Ryan jumps into action to like cut the rope, and I'm like, holy shit, this is happening. Like, holy shit, this is happening. And for me, I'm like completely shocked. And this is a thing that I'm realizing now, and with video games, and it kind of started back with The Last of Us Part 2, and I'm not going to talk any spoilers about that, but whenever something happens in a video game and it is very traumatic, it is very sad, it doesn't hit me until way later. I have to process the information that I was just given because I am so very spoiler sensitive that I won't see things before, like in marketing material. I haven't, again, the example that I bring up right now because it's very in the zeitgeist is Spider-Man. I have not seen the Spider-Man trailers. I know that there's going to be a new Spider-Man movie and Spider-Man's my favorite superhero. Why would I fucking watch the trailer and like ruin moments in that movie for me? I wouldn't. I'm not going to. And so I'm in this game and I can't imagine having that moment ripped away from you where I thought it was going to be those two together the whole game, and then he just automatically, like, in one scene just ripped away so fast, and I did not see it coming, like, as the writers probably intended. And then I had to deal with that, and I didn't cry until the lantern scene. Like, I cried then. I'm like, Gabe is gone. Like, Gabe is not here anymore. And everyone is, like, having a happy moment, and I'm just sitting here just, like, losing it because I'm coming to terms with the character that I lost in a very intense moment. I don't cry like, oh, he got hit. Oh, I'm just going to start bawling now because he's dead. It's like, it takes me a moment to process all that happened. And I'm so glad I didn't have that spoiled for me because that would have definitely tampered the whole game for me pretty much. Cause
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, it makes the first episode basically a dud, right?
It does.
Because it's like,
and
it's
episode
slow
2.
pace. Yeah, I mean, the thing with the marketing for the game as well is what's pretty bad about it is they don't even give, like, in the marketing, they never even gave any context to Gabe. It's just like, I remember actually making fun of it and people in Discord making fun of it, of like Gabe and then like a sad emoji, because it's like, I don't even know who this guy is, I don't even care who this guy is, and I'm being told he's dead. You know, it's like I'm being told 5 seconds this guy's dead, and it's like, I don't know this guy, I've not built up any relationship or connection with this guy, what do I care? And it's like, oh, well, you just ruined it for no reason then. It didn't really help the trailers. It didn't help me want to play the game more, you know, knowing he's dead. Like, so yeah, it's really stupid. I don't know why they did that.
Yeah, and he's
I don't know why I don't know why they did that when they like what's also bad is, like, as I said, I didn't seek out Life is Strange trailers. They put it in their like conferences and like other like bundled with like other announcements and stuff. So that, like, I get it if you maybe make it like a separate upload and you're like, you know, do not watch, you know, spoilers or whatever. Like you put something around it that's like, you know, story deep dive or something. Like you put some context with it, you know, that would be a bit more forgivable. But yeah, so yeah, that annoys me. But you know, chapter 1, I want to also quickly say I loved putting glasses on the gnome.
Oh, yes,
the gnome
dude.
is the best character. So
that gnome
shout out
is
to
so
gnome.
awesome. And like all the jokes, dude, I was laughing so hard when they were doing all the no more jokes, you know, like it's so
Yeah.
good. So good.
Yeah, I'm glad the gnome didn't die. That's the
Me too.
and the trailers didn't spoil that.
No, but the gnome had to watch a really fucking sad situation play out, though. I think the theme of I want to hear what you have to say, but I think the theme of the first episode was first impressions. I think that's like the whole theme.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that. I think it does a really good job of introducing a lot of the characters and their relationships with each other. I think I could definitely see that. I was just going to say about, you know, you referred to the gnome and having to witness a terrible situation. I think the sort of side story with Eleanor and Riley, it might be my favorite part of the game. I think they might actually be, well, Eleanor might actually be my favorite character, because it's like, she doesn't want to, in the game, she, you know, she's suffering from like Alzheimer's or dementia in terms of she can't remember things because of her old age, and she doesn't want to tell anyone, and she especially doesn't want Riley to know because she's going away to study to, you know, university, and it's been her dream to go away to study at university. So it actually puts me, in terms of like the decision making with her like side stories, it put me in a genuinely difficult scenario, because it's like, you don't want Eleanor to suffer on her own. Like, she needs someone to help her out and care for her, and she's, a good person and a genuine person. But then also, you understand that it means the world to her that Riley's going and chasing her dreams and going to live her own life. So there's that real tangible conflict that's relatable in like a realistic sense, in like an actual family drama sense, and it's not like this person's bad, this person's good, like it's morally complex. And I thought like you essentially to find out about it as well, you're invading Eleanor's thoughts and using your Jedi thought power tricks and all of that. So it's like you're like learning, you're like intruding essentially to find it out as well. So it like adds like an extra like ethical issue with it in a sense. So I thought that was fantastic. Like I thought that was brilliant. Maybe the best part of the game, because it's like I genuinely didn't know what to do. I didn't know what would be right, and I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to that like sub story essentially. I think you can really argue both sides of it, and it's fantastic. It's like completely wonderful.
It is really wonderful, and I can't wait to talk about how that turned out for both of us, because it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, but I
Oh no.
I have a lot to say about that. But let's take chapter 1 and let's go through some main points. And I want to talk about Mac, because Mac is the very first time you see him, he gets into a fight with Gabe, and then Alex freaks the fuck out. And that is a very awesome scene. First impressions matter a lot, and this is kind of the whole, like I said, the theme. She's arriving to town, she's having first impressions with everyone, and then other people are having first impressions with her. And I think that players seeing Mac for the first time be an asshole, they don't forget it. I think that people carry it, and it made me like really curious at the end of every episode to see how people interacted with Mac, because Mac, with a bad first impression, then doesn't get your empathy, he doesn't get your love, he doesn't get anything like that. And I wanted to see how other players reacted, and for me, I chose the unpopular answer. I stayed out of Mac and Riley's fight. I did not want to interfere. I think that it's between them and them alone, and I was like, I'm not going to be out here being an asshole like right in front of this guy, because he's already being an asshole himself. And so I just let it happen, and that's the unpopular choice. A lot of people told Riley about the fight. What did you do?
I told Riley about the fight. I want to talk about Mac in terms of, I think it'll be good to cover him sort of like all at once. His character doesn't work for me that well, because I think, again, there's a similar character in the first Life is Strange, kind of, where it's like someone like a bit like mentally unstable and like angry, and it's something where for me he always, because he's tied into the mystery of like Gabe's death as well, right? And it's like,
Yes.
it's pushed a bit too hard and made like too obvious that like he's going to be like the lead suspect, that like you already know, or at least I knew, like, by episode 2, you're like, he's not the guy. Like, it's not him. Like, there's no way it's him, because they wouldn't give it away that easy. Like, they're really trying to bait you into, like, hating this guy, and there's going to be more to his character. There's going to be more going on. There has to be. They're not just going to be like, yeah, it was this dude, that's it, show's over, right? Like, so, for me, his character kind of didn't work in that sense, like, and it was kind of the thing where, like, with a lot of the dialogue with him, it's like, they really want to push you to like you say, like, not be empathetic to him at first, and not sort of see his perspective, because you're sort of like, you're meant to be emotional, and everyone else is against him as well. And for me, it didn't work as well as I think it could have, because again, it just felt too obvious. It felt like there has to be more going on. There's no way he's like that much of a dick and like that much of a terrible person, and if he was, they wouldn't give it away that early. So his character wasn't brilliant for me. I think I'm glad that they do take him on like more of an arc and more of a journey, and he's still like sort of a bit of a dick, but he's like not this like villainous character that you're led to believe. I mean, for me, unsuccessfully led to believe, but yeah. So I just wanted to say about him. But in terms of with Riley, I did get involved, because yeah, I just thought it was too unreasonable. But I totally see what you mean about not getting it. It's their own personal thing, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing with his character is, I I'm going to keep using these words, but I was empathetic with his character because when I was younger, I definitely was in a bad mindset just like he was, and I was like, can we get him out of this? Can we give him some confidence? Can we help his insecurities? Like, he needs something cuz he is just struggling with this, and I know that Riley means a ton to him, and I don't want to fuck it up. I don't want to fuck up that relationship. Like, he is so worried. There's an overwhelming amount of love that he has, and he's afraid of losing it. And I'm like super empathetic to this guy, and I'm just like, we have to calm him down. We have to do something to like help him out. And that's like his whole arc is like trying to deal with that. You're kind of, I was playing this with my cousin, which is really cool. Like I said, my cousin and I have been playing games together, and he was watching me play this, and we kind of talked about decisions when they would pop up and like what we should do. And he was saying, I totally just lost my train of thought. That sucks. But like, it was cool to see different perspectives, and this character was one I was like, I'm going to work with him because he is losing it. And I'm glad that I did. I'm very glad that I did, because he needed that. He is a dick still, like you said, he is. Especially the last thing that I remember him saying to Alex was like, stop hitting on me, like I'm taken. I was like, oh, come on, dude. Come on.
Yeah, there were times where, yeah, like with his character, again, it's probably, it's going into like chapter 2, but in terms of his character, it's like there's the part where you're like really angry and you're like, I called you to call off the mining, to call off the bombing, and he's like, oh, couldn't do anything about it, didn't get the call or whatever. And you can respond with, it's like the responses are essentially like angry versus like a bit less angry, basically. And it's kind of like, I wish at that point you could ask him more questions and like get more out of him, because again, like I'm already like, okay, so this is a false flag, this guy is not actually responsible. So in terms of what I want to do, I want to ask him more questions like there and then. Like, I want to keep the conversation going, and I want to like figure out what's going on, and I don't want to like huff off like and be angry or whatever, or like blame him fully. I don't want to just go like, oh, forget this. And I also don't want to be like, it was you, it was all you. Like, I don't want to do either of those things. And it's kind of like the game, because of how it progresses the mystery, it kind of forces you into it. And so I thought stuff like that was unfortunate, but I understand, they've got to limit your options as a player to get through. But yeah, that in terms of like, again, it's kind of like that character is, you're meant to be empathetic towards him, it feels like, later in the story rather than early on in the story. So it's interesting that both of us, in sort of different ways, we didn't really go along with that in a sense. Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and something I want to bring up, because this is chapter 1, but it's something that I did throughout the entire game, and that was take a moment. I took a lot of moments with the music, and I let the scenes play out, and I let the songs finish. And I did that in the record store. I did it on the bridge. I did it in the apartment. I did it all over, man. I freaking love the music in this game. I think it slaps just like the first game. I cannot remember for the life of me any music from... Actually, there's one song from the second game. This Life is Strange 2 is just... It doesn't hit anywhere it was supposed to. And this one really... I like the way it did the looping camera, the beautiful scenery, the colors like we were talking about. And it kind of gives you that time to take a second and reflect on what's happening. And I like that because with reflections, I can sit there and I can be like, do I want to piss off this character? Or do I want... Because, like, will that bite me in the ass? And I can sit there and reflect on it while I listen to this nice music. And that's kind of what I was doing. And I would think about, Gabe, and I would think about the situations. And it was just so awesome, dude. What a fucking awesome, like, a small thing to put in the game that not all players, like, if you look at the player characters, is very split. Like, some people sat down and listened to music, some people didn't.
Yeah, I did, but the only reason I did is because I thought that might be an achievement for doing all of that. So, no, I mean, I get what you mean. I'd just say that for me, the game, I've said it a ton already, but the game's pretty slow-paced. And so I didn't really need, personally, I didn't need time to reflect. I needed time to, go. It's my is my take on that. But I get what you're saying, right? Because of how you'd think about decisions and how some stuff would hit you later, and you'd need to sort of take that moment. I'm also glad it's in the game. In that sense, it didn't resonate with me, but it's cool how it did resonate with you.
Oh, dude. Okay. All right. And then in chapter 1, there is a jukebox, and there's some games that you can play. And I won the jukebox game, and I was so fucking proud of, like, damn, I'm good, like, let's go. It's just like, it's such a good moment because that's like the first time that you interact with Steph, I believe, besides the record shop.
Yep.
And I mean, she was not in a good mood. She was kind of sitting there stewing on some emotions, and you can read into it, and then you can be like, how can I fix this? Oh, I freaking love that, by the way, dude. I love being the therapist. That's what my cousin was saying. He was like, dude, you're basically just a therapist. Like, that's what this game is. And I'm like, hey, I'm not against it. This is fun. We're helping people. And that kind of was a theme that I went with through the entire game. Like, there's a decision way later on where they're like, what does Alex want to do? Does she want to play music or do all this stuff? And there's one that's like, let's help people. And I'm like, that's what I've been doing. I've been helping people this whole game. I'm gonna fucking help people. Like, let her help people. That's so awesome. Such a unique power that she has. Fucking let her do it. And that's how I played. But man, I can't believe I won the jukebox game.
Yeah, I did that side quest as well. I really liked that. I like a lot of the side stuff in terms of switching up the gameplay a little. I think it's really important for this type of game to do that. Same thing for like the foosball and all of that stuff. But yeah, for the jukebox, I got out like a notepad, and I was like, I mean, I basically solved it. I mean, I don't in terms of, I was like, for every I did it in a really systematic way, and I probably didn't have to be so systematic, but I basically looked at every single like dialogue option, and then I looked through all the records, and I was like, which of these will it eliminate if I choose it? And then I like wrote them all down as like a tally, and then I was like, okay, so if I ask this and then this and then this and then this, I will definitely know which album it is, basically. So I basically like plotted it all out like in front of me, and then was like, okay, so I'm gonna do that, and that, and then it worked. And then I kept going along and like crossing off the ones that it couldn't be. So yeah, I really liked that though. The fact that it sort of made me want to do that, like I was invested in the game enough to do that and to care about it to that level was really cool.
Dude, I was invested in all the stupid stuff that didn't matter at all. Like, I think my favorite thing in the game was the two friends that could become lovers. That was my favorite thing. Like, reading those two's emotions, and like I wanted to get involved from the very beginning, and Alex wouldn't. She's like, it's not my business. And I mean, I'm back and forth on that, because it was like, it's not my business to be in the middle of people's fights with Riley and Mac, but then again, I see two strangers who are conflicted in their emotions, and I'm like, I just want to fucking help. And like, I just love listening to the guy who's like, yeah, like, I want to take you out, just us, alone, not with a third wheel. And it's like, the girl's like, yeah, I don't know about that. And then that whole, like, just listening to people's conversations, and like each chapter, those characters are still in this town because it is a small town, and I keep running, like, listening to them. I'm like, ooh, there they are. I'm gonna go read their emotions, see how they're doing. And like, I had so much fun doing that, and those two were definitely like my favorite. I remember I got them to, I read their emotions, and the girl's emotions had changed. So she's like, I'm so into him. Why am I so into him? And I'm like, what? Like, what? Where did this come from? And then he's like, oh, I just want this to work out so much. And I was like, it let me interact that time. And I was like, yes! I called my cousin who was out at the time, and I told him that, like, I got those two together, and him and I were just like celebrating. We're like, yeah, dude, like, let's go. It was so much fun. Definitely like a highlight in the game for me, even though it's just such a small moment that maybe people don't even know who the characters I'm talking about are, or who knows. But like, I walked around Haven, and I listened to every character. Another one of my favorite characters, I just want to say this, because it made me laugh every single fucking time, is the angry guy. Like, you read him, and he's just like, the very first time you read him, he's like, oh!
It's just pure screaming.
Yeah, dude.
It was hilarious.
He's so funny. And then he gets into like therapy books, and he's like, 1, 2, 3, I'm not angry. And he just gets more and more like amped and more angry. He's like mad at the book, and then like his car gets like a like a thing on the tire so that he can't move, and he's like trying not to freak out, and I'm just like laughing and listening to this guy struggle, and it's such a small thing that doesn't have anything to do with anything in the game, but you can just read his emotions and feel, and like it just made me laugh. It was a really good time. But
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about the dynamic of reading people's emotions like that, and it's quite clever and it's quite contrived at the same time, because it's like from a gameplay perspective and from like a side quest perspective, it has so much promise and it works so well. But then from like a writing perspective, it's kind of like a cheat code for the writers, right? In terms of when you're writing a story, it's sometimes difficult for you to portray to the reader characters' feelings if they don't like express those feelings, and sometimes they won't express those feelings because they won't want to talk to the protagonist about how they're feeling, right? And they won't want to just give like an exposition dump. So being able to just like look directly into the mind of all of the characters and just like see exactly what they're feeling, it's like it must take like a weight off of the writer's shoulders, because it's like we don't have to like subtly imply how they're feeling or like do any of these like other like aspects of storytelling to show how they're feeling in a way that is conveyed to the reader but not to other characters or to like narration or anything like that. But then in terms of gameplay, it's also like really interesting as a mechanic. So it's kind of like a shortcut in terms of writing, but it's effective in terms of gameplay and how the story within the game itself plays out.
yeah, they definitely made it fun to read people. Because if it sucked, then it would be like, I don't care about reading that person. I don't care about feeling for anyone. And they made it really well. Like you said, it does seem like a cheat code, but it's a fun cheat code. You know, it's something. It's the GTA jetpack that you get. You know, you have fun with it, and I loved it. I loved the power so much, and getting to know like the shop owners and just Haven. Like having a small town setting for this was brilliant because it allows more focus. Because if you were in a city and you could just read every person, I imagine that's super overwhelming for Alex. But keeping a tight knit situation where you get to know characters is so much. It's so much better. And I think at the end I chose for her to like stick around because I think it was the best for her in general. But we'll get to that. Now I want to know, was Riley and Mac broke up for you? Right?
Yeah, they did break up with each other. Yeah.
In chapter 1? That's crazy. I didn't.
Yeah.
See, that's what I didn't want. I literally didn't want that. So I was like, I'm going to help him out. If he was like abusive and a terrible dude, I would have definitely been like, fuck that guy. But he wasn't. He was just insecure as fuck and I wanted to help. And so
I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, when he shows up, he just like starts fighting Gabe, right? Like he just
Right.
shows up in your apartment,
Yeah,
above
but
the
he's
bar,
not,
and
he's not abusing Riley though.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree, but you know, he's
I do.
abusing someone else instead.
That's true. That's true. But that's going to be the end of the discussion for chapter 1, I think, and most of the decisions, Dude, what did you think about Ethan?
I like Ethan. He's got that, he's got that like innocence to him, and yeah, I mean, in terms of generally, I don't know.
I thought he was a good kid. I thought he was a really good kid. I liked that he did the comic books. I read the comic book before I went to the mine, so I was like, no way. And I started to look around. I'm like, oh, dude, yeah, he's definitely basing this off of this. And then Alex figures it out, and I'm like, oh, I'm awesome. I'm awesome for reading this early and figuring it out. But it was cool, and like how he struggles with losing Gabe the whole game. I think that it shows a perspective of a child who has never been through things like this. And
Yeah, I'll say that in terms of chapter 1, I don't like how the decision with him doesn't matter at all. Basically, in terms of it doesn't matter in a direct sense. Like it matters in terms of how characters will feel about you, but it doesn't matter in the sense of like I knew that the bombings were happening at the mine today, like before I spoke with Ethan about and Gabe in terms of him going to the mine, right? So I was like, well, if he was normally just going there, it's like that's maybe okay, but I'm like, well, they're bombing the place tonight, so I've got to tell him like that he's going over there, and then you tell him, but you like don't your character doesn't put like two and two together, like they don't say immediately like oh yeah, and the place is being bombed, like you know, and it's like why does that not matter? And then also it's like even if you tell them early what he's planning on doing tonight, he doesn't get stopped from doing it. He just does it anyway. So it's a bit, you know, disappointing there
That's
from
why
my perspective.
that's why I chose not to tell, because I felt like I'd just piss him off and then he was gonna go anyways, and that's why I didn't tell on Ethan. But I had a
At that
really
point, it just shouldn't be a decision, though. I
I
feel like they should just not have it be a decision.
I don't know. It's a fun one. You're right. It doesn't matter at all. But it's just
Well, it should have. Yeah, okay.
it's all about
I think
emotion.
that it either shouldn't be a decision or it should have more consequences. They should have done one of those two.
I see what you're saying. But I had a really cool moment with Addie. Actually, in the Discord, I was in the Life is Strange chat, and we were playing the game, and we were literally like on the same page. And like you said, I just realized that the bombings were gonna happen, and I realized the decision I made, and I was like, oh no. And I messaged Addie, and I was like, because I knew Addie was just slightly further than I was, so I was like, it's safe to discuss this part that I'm at. And I said, did you tell about Ethan or did you keep it? And Addie and I made the same decision not to tell on Ethan, which ended up not mattering. But still, I was like, dude, I think we fucked up. I was like, I just read the posters and like, there's gonna be an explosion this night, and I think that we might have just killed that kid. Like, fuck. And
I mean, that would have been hilarious
and Addie and I were just like on that same page, and Addie just messaged me back, was like, oh shit. It's like, whoa, dude, because with Life is Strange anything can happen. Like, it's so dark and it's such a realistic, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with that because again, I don't think the decisions matter. So
They
I'm
don't.
sort of like,
Yeah, they don't. Let's talk about chapter 2, which is called Lantern. And the very first thing that kind of goes on is you go throughout the town and you need to talk to Mac because he knows about the call. It's about the, you know, because Gabe just died, the wake happens, and then you play foosball and you lose against Steph. Or I lose against Steph. I can't believe I lost, dude. I'm so pissed off. I beat her in the first 2 matches. Can't believe that happened. Should have fucking taken the championship.
good time for me to talk about another pacing issue that the game has, in my opinion. And that's the fact that in Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, and Chapter 4, arguably, you're like, there's this great injustice about Gabe's death, and then it's like, you're also playing foosball and doing like a big LARP across the whole town, and then you're doing a festival as well, and it's like, it's weird because it's like, I feel like my version of the character wouldn't be doing all of that, would be more focused on, you know, getting justice and figuring out the mystery. It just felt a bit odd that that stuff was in there, and it's tough because I understand why it's in there where it is. Like, it's not that I don't get it. It's like for example with, you know, the LARP in Chapter 3, which we'll talk about, it's like that stuff is important to happen after Gabe's death because it, you know, that chapter's about Ethan and how he's dealing with it. So if it happened before his death, it wouldn't work because if it's about Ethan reacting to it and dealing with it, then, you know, if that's before it even happens, then it doesn't make sense. So I understand why things are placed where they are, but I still think there's some issues where it's like I'm just fucking around and I'm not doing what I would want to do and also what the character would want to do. But it's good that all of that stuff is still really fun and interesting, so it's not as big of a problem, and also won't be a problem for many people. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that problem starts in Chapter 2 and sort of carries on through a bit of the game, but I also understand that for a lot of people it won't be that much of a problem because of how well executed everything is.
Yeah. And like I didn't really have any problems with pacing. I think that spending a small amount of a day for a kid to do this stuff that was already being planned, was already happening, to help him out with grieving, I think that it fits very well because, like, again, the kid's never had to deal with anything like that before. And it's not like, oh, we're spending a week not investigating this. It's like, it's literally a couple hours in the day and it's just for the kid. And I was totally down with it. And I think that this chapter chapter 3 was a lot of people's favorite. I don't know if it's my favorite, even though I love the whole thing, but it just seemed like it didn't. It's so weird because I want to talk about the romancing, but it seems like Steph is definitely the option to romance. Like, there's way more flirting with that. There's way more, like, just interactions, more romantic interactions with Steph than there are with Ryan. But as soon as I saw Ryan, I was like, I'm going to set him up with the bird lady who's in the park. That was, like, my first thought. But then as I played, I ended up choosing to romance him. And I kind of regretted it a little bit. I was like, I don't know why I did that. And I love Steph so much. But I don't know.
Yeah, I romanced Steph, but I didn't find. I thought some stuff was cute, you know, like the same with Ryan as well. Like I think they gave each character like enough opportunities in terms of that, but I didn't think it was sort of particularly interesting. I didn't think it was like as developed or as emotionally resonant as it could have been. But yeah, I went with Steph. So
Yeah. Let's talk about. So we talked about the wake, and then I didn't cry at the wake either. There's too much going on, and I was still like kind of taken back by what had just happened. And then I definitely teared up when Steph was struggling, but then I turned to Mac, and I guess, dude, we haven't talked about memories, but we'll talk about that later. And then you go and you talk to Mac, and this is where you have to decide to calm Mac down or to just let him panic. And I just couldn't imagine letting him go through that because I have had a panic attack before, and it sucks. It's actually terrible. And I was like, man, people really... Whenever I looked at the decisions, it's overwhelming. Like, less than 5%, let him deal with it on his own. And I was like, yeah, you don't just, like, kind of let someone just go through that horrible feeling of, like, you're gonna die. Just, like... And so, I definitely empathize with Mac there. Did you empathize with him or just kind of let him deal? And I wonder what happens when you do let him deal.
I think I empathize with him. I mean, we talked earlier about Mac, but I was already at this point. I was like, well, he's not the killer and he's not the person responsible, and I know that like certainly. So I already felt that he was getting kind of by this point in the game. I'm like, he's getting like a bad deal. Like he's clearly more innocent than or less responsible than the story is trying to make you believe. So yeah, I think I helped him out at that point.
Very nice, very nice. I'm glad that people did. That was the moment, like whenever I saw that decision and how many people helped him out, I was like, yeah, this game is being effective in its way of empathy, which is good because that's the theme. But it kind of, I want to know what happened with Eleanor and reminding her about Gabe's death. Did you do that?
Yes.
Yeah, I did not. I think that
Okay.
I talked to my cousin about it. He and I disagreed, and I went with my decision. And I think it messed up the arc for Riley, the ending that I wanted. I wanted her to go off to college because there are people who take care of people with Alzheimer's and
Yep.
like home health agency. I literally work for a home health agency, so I know that there's good people out there who will do this. And I was like, Riley shouldn't stop her life, but she can come back and still be a part of Eleanor's life later. And so this is my whole thought process as real life. And I was like, I'm not going to tell Eleanor so that she has to go through this grief every time. You know how horrible that is to do to somebody? Like, just to tell them that someone died and then they forget again and then you have to tell them again. I just was like, I'm not going to do that. And then it ended up being a problem because Riley finds out that she has Alzheimer's. And I don't know in your story if Riley ever found out. But if Riley doesn't find out, then she goes to college. And it's just like a horrible, like, gray story or gray area story that you don't really get a win either way. It's just sad. And, like, I just didn't get the ending that I preferred, but I definitely did not. I was part of the minority. Like, I did not tell her about the death, but my cousin said I should have.
Yeah, I think you should. I mean, I did because I thought that I should.
Right.
Yeah, for me, I mean, Eleanor, the thing with her struggle is that like she really desperately does want to remember, right? And she wants to stay strong. So it's like for me, it's like if I can help her in that sense, like even if it hurts for her to remember, and I think you made a really strong point with that, like the idea that she could forget again and then have to re-go through the grief. I think that's a powerful argument, but I think like because I know that she really wants to know and like keep a grip on, you know, reality and her memory as much as she can. I thought it was important to tell her the truth. And yeah, for me, in terms of if we just cover this entire subplot now, yeah, I saw Riley at the bus stop later, and I had the option to tell her about Eleanor. She still didn't know as she was like going off to college, and I didn't. So yeah, so for me, she did go off to college
Wow.
without knowing, and yeah, but neither. I agree. We mentioned it earlier as well. Neither situation is ideal.
But that's awesome. You kind of got the ending that I wish I got, dude. And this this conversation is just bringing to light how much I love this game because like it's really deep, and we're making a lot of different choices that obviously most of the choices don't have outcomes, but they mean so much to us differently. Like, do you know what I mean? Like we have different philosophies on the decisions that don't matter very much. And I think that that is part of the conversation to open up a more broad conversation. And I think that that's like this game is really effective at doing that. And it's definitely something I suggest if I don't know, you're just playing with someone else, like a backseat gamer, definitely around because it's just such a fun thing to discuss and what decisions to make and all that.
There's an option in the game as well if you stream the game to
Yeah.
have your like chat vote on it, which is quite cool.
Yeah, it's very cool, like community votes and stuff. Dude, what did you make Charlotte sign the Typhon agreement or did you not?
Oh, I told her not to.
Oh man, dude, this was such a hard decision for me. I think I spent like 5 minutes just sitting there like, am I gonna fuck something up where I can like actually get Typhon, but then it's all void because I made this decision with Charlotte? I'm like sitting there and I was having so much problems, but I don't know, in my experience, having money definitely helps things a lot. And she was saying enough to send him to college. I don't know if you've ever spent money on college, but that shit ain't cheap. And if there's enough to get him through college, that's a lot of fucking money. That's a lot of money. I'm like, fuck them, take the money, and then I will take them down. And that's what I told her to do. I was like, take the money. Like, you need it. You need it. And I hated it because it's not something that feels good to do. But I was minority in that one.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's like the classic. I mean, again, it's a bit. I don't know. It's a decision that doesn't feel that important in the grand scheme of things, and it's something where
It opens up the
been
conversation.
done in a lot of. It's been done in a lot of games and a lot of media before. I think this idea of like, you know, money or principles, right? Essentially, is what it's coming down to. You know, because they're paying for her silence, of course, and yeah, for me, it was something where I thought, yeah, you know, kind of like you, I'm like, I may depend on her in the future, and so if I tell her to take the money, then you know she's not going to be able to help me out, perhaps. Yeah, for me, I told her not to as well because of just like it felt wrong to, you know, Gabe to do that in terms of getting justice for him and doing right by him. That yeah, for me it was don't take the money.
Man. Yeah, and I guess that we're kind of chapter 3 coming to a quick end, but did you choose to like who did you go choose to go as in the LARP? I went as Alto, but I didn't even know there was an option for Alwyn, and I would have done that one.
Oh, I did the one that was like most similar to Alex. I can't remember what one it was. It was like
Alexandra.
Alexandra.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went with that one. I thought it sounded the best to me.
Okay, and at the wake, I backed Ryan's claim because that call was crazy. I actually want to know a lot because this is another moment where I like was so happy and like I was glowing and I was like feeling it. It's like whenever you go up to Gabe on or not Gabe, go up to Ryan on the cliff where Gabe died and you have a moment where he feels happiness and you know all of that stuff. Like that whole romantic encounter was kind of where I decided like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to romance Ryan. Like that was the encounter where it happened, and like he was the first person that Alex told after Gabe, but telling Gabe is a decision. So I keep saying that, but you don't have to tell Gabe. You can literally keep it to yourself. But I told Gabe, and then he died, and now I had nobody to tell. And then I got to show Ryan during that, or Alex. I need to start saying more Alex. I just, whenever I play a character, I get so immersed. I'm like, I am that character. And Yeah, so I told Ryan and I showed Ryan and I offered Gabe's forgiveness during that cutscene because I think that my forgiveness and him forgiving himself doesn't have as much weight as if Ryan or as if Gabe was to forgive him because it hurts so much to not have closure, and I feel like Gabe could have offered that.
I totally disagree with you. Yeah, again, on basically everything in terms of all the decisions you spoke about. So in terms of I showed Ryan the powers. I didn't say Gabe would forgive him because I don't like the idea of like speaking for a dead person. I think that's kind of fucked up in terms of like morally because it's like I don't know what Gabe would think right now. He could be thinking about sushi or whatever. Like I don't know. I don't know what he thinks. I don't know what he'd say. Like I'm not gonna speak for him, and speaking for him, especially like after he's just died, and emotions are high and all of this. Like I do think it's the most emotionally impactful thing to say. I agree with you there, but I think that's not necessarily a good thing in terms of it. So I think I said for him to like forgive himself essentially that he's putting this weight on himself. Gabe isn't, and I'm not. Alex isn't, right? It's him that is sort of carrying that burden, and he needs to be the one to overcome it because I don't have a problem with him, and who knows about Gabe, right? But in terms of yeah, and then in terms of the wake, I said what was factually accurate is how I would describe it, in the sense that I didn't hear the phone call. So, Gabe told me that he did make the phone call, and I do believe him, but I didn't hear it myself, and so, that's as far as I would go on that. So that's essentially my take on those events.
Yeah, I mean, dude, there at any moment, I'm a huge hugger in real life, so the pandemic really fucked me up. But man, I love hugging people. I think there's a closeness to it. And whenever I went to the meetup, I think I hugged everyone, and I hugged everyone again before, like whenever I said goodbye to them, because I freaking think that it just creates a close connection. And I think that some of these people that I met at the Discord meetup, I think that they will be lifelong friends because I've already talked to them for 11 months, and then meeting them didn't change anything. They were still the same people that I talked to in the chat, and everything rolled like I had already known them for 11 months. And so hugging them was like, we are friends like for a very long time. And so anytime there was an option to hug someone, I did it. And so I hugged Gabe, and I hugged Alex, and I think I hugged Steph. I hugged everyone. And that was like a really fun decision for me. As soon as it came up, I was with my cousin. I'm like, hug, dude. I'm hugging. Let's go. But I did not win the foosball thing. I'm still mad about that. And I did not help the birdwatcher, which is the person that I wanted Ryan to end up with until I saw that cutscene where he was on the cliffside. But I did want to say about that cutscene, because we were talking about it. Alex offered Ryan Gabe's forgiveness is the number one choice by a large margin. And maybe I think you're right because it's the emotional answer. And I don't know if you've ever not had closure in your life, but it sucks. And even if you think it's fucked up to speak for someone dead, I think that closure helps the living more than it.
Yeah, but you
can't
can't give closure on behalf of someone that's dead. Like you can give it from your perspective, or or encourage someone from their own perspective, but you can't give it from like the person who's no longer with us.
That's
I
true.
completely
But
disagree. I mean, also I will say, like, I don't take any like. There's no it's not meaningful to me like what other people choose to do in terms
right.
of the statistics, because I mean first of all, right, I think most Life is Strange fans have bad taste and
Whoa.
are idiots. So
Damn.
that's my first thing. So
Holy
already
shit, bro.
It's not even like
I think it's you who suck.
if everyone disagrees with me, then good. Like that's a good thing, right? No, but I think that in all seriousness, I think that the writers probably do want you to go for that decision, but I don't think it's the right decision. And thankfully, the decisions don't matter. So who cares, right?
Right.
But,
I like to see the statistics. I'm very much big on analytics, and I'm big on seeing what other people did in comparison to me. It doesn't change how I feel about what I chose, and it doesn't matter. Like, again, like it matters about what you chose and how you felt, and that's what's very important. But it's still so awesome to see that, and I just wanted to say, like, with that decision specifically, whenever someone, I don't know, when you're on the edge of emotional collapse, it can stay inside or the dam can break. And in that situation, again, we're gonna keep emphasizing choices don't matter, but the dam is always gonna break no matter what you choose in that situation. But I think that in real life, it wouldn't break as easily unless you brought into the person who passed into the conversation, because there's no closure. It literally keeps that dam up because there is no closure. And I wanted to give him closure, even if it's not morally right in your opinion. And that's why I chose that.
Yeah,
But
I think for me it's like I don't disagree in that sense. I just think it could have been written better
better.
or worded better, right? Like
Interesting.
you could say like oh well, Gabe thought the world of you, or Gabe loved you, or like things that like are like more accurate and were more accurate before he died, rather than like his like posthumous analysis on his own death, if that makes sense. Like it's a bit weird to like to temporally like be like, oh yeah, well I know Gabe and Gabe would have thought this,
Yeah.
it's like it's a bit weird when you could get a similar effect from referring to things that like you definitely know are true, and you could like remind him of. And like yeah, so that's probably my take on that. So I agree with you in that sense of like bringing him up and not being afraid of the topic would make sense.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the next stuff. I did Storm Rider for the LARP boss. Do you know what you chose?
I don't remember, honestly. I think I just looked at which one looked cooler to me at the time. I mean, I think again, like I don't really think we need to go through like every single
No, definitely not.
decision.
That's the last one that I'm gonna bring up, and there's a couple more that we're in chapter 2, but we're about to hit chapter 3, so we're about halfway through.
Yeah. Okay.
Who did you choose to distract Diane? Because episode 3 starts out, and there's like a closeness because of the ending of chapter 2, where the lantern is
I
set
chose
away.
Steph, but it doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
Which
matter. It really doesn't, and that's what sucks. Is like I just when like it was another decision that took a long time because I had to think about like who I wanted to see in the next cutscene more. Like that's all. That's like the whole.
Yeah, I mean this this really highlights like a huge problem with the game, and it's going to make this podcast insufferable to listen to, because so many of these decisions I'm just going to be like, doesn't matter, doesn't matter, like not none of it matters. And
It's true.
yeah, so
Still about like how you were feeling in that moment. Did you feel like everything didn't matter, or did you feel like it was going to matter and then it panned out not mattering?
no, I mean it's more disappointing that the decisions they put in the game don't matter.
Right.
Like it's even more disappointing if you're along for the ride, really. Whereas if you know going in that none of this matters, I mean, yeah, you're less invested, but you're not disappointed.
Did you take? Okay, man, this scene. Did you take Charlotte's anger away?
Yes.
I did too, and it does not have a good outcome.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I went with it because I thought like this was the moment where I mentioned earlier that sometimes I'd go for like what's the funniest outcome, like what's the most fun, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do this, because I was like, I'm gonna take her anger, and then I'm not gonna be able to control my own anger, and it's also not gonna help things, but it's gonna be like it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to do it and to see that play out. And it wasn't as fun as I was expecting it to be honest. But I want to say about chapter 3, just generally, just quickly, because I think talking about the chapters generally is maybe better than just going from decision to decision. But I liked the LARP section, and I really liked the fact that you could approach the combat situations differently. Like the combat on its own is pretty bad, but the fact that they went that extra mile just for this section, particularly when no one was expecting it and it wasn't necessary, was really good. And I liked how you could get like the troll dust to
Yes.
sedate the troll, or you could bribe him for a little extra money, and you could like circumvent a lot of the combat. I thought that was really cool, and all of the scrolls and the additional abilities that you get.
I agree. I think that the way that the characters were interchanged, or like Ryan would change outfits and be different characters, I thought that was really fun. And then I love how the town was decorated, and like the business signs were changed so that it was all set up for the LARP. I think that the LARP was a lot of effort went into that. Like if that happened in real life, it would just be like so special because that is a lot of work that Steph did, and I really loved this whole part. It really made me feel good. It was a lot of fun to play. I liked the gameplay like style change where that like turn-based combat and stuff. I think that it was just fun to see it in the game, and I just think that over at who made this game? It's not Don't Nod.
Deck 9.
Deck 9. They understand like I think they're nerds, but they also are like appealing to like a nerdy audience, and they've done D&D games before and all kinds of stuff. And I think that this is just kind of going further in that direction where they're just like, we have fun making these little games, and this was just so emotionally impactful. And I know that you felt like it was a waste of time and not what the character would do, but I think that it was in the middle. There was like not a timer. There was no timer. We were curious as to what happened to Gabe, but we also were trying to help people in the town, and Ethan was definitely somebody who needed a lot of help as a child. And I just love how everybody got so involved and so well done. And I mean, I kind of was mean to what's the old guy's name? He was the barkeep anyways, but he was drinking and talking about like, if you read his emotions, he's like, oh, I get free ale. And I'm like, you should slow it down on the ale. We track that. And it kind of pissed him off. But
I let him have it. And I
did?
feel vindicated because, Jed turns out to be like the biggest asshole on planet Earth, so I'm glad I didn't, fuck Jed, obviously, let him take all his booze. But yeah, I mean, it's probably not a good idea to, encourage alcoholism for an alcoholic, but
yeah, and it wasn't, yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what Alex said. She ended up saying something along the lines of, it's for the good. It's for your health and something like that, instead of being an asshole. But he was just angry. So he had like a red aura after I pissed him off. So I was like, oh, that sucks. But had to be done. And that's not even a decision that matters. It's just something that I did, and it's fun. It's fun to talk about that stuff. Nothing matters. None of the decisions matter. I think that they wanted to tell a story, and I prefer that, I think. Because whenever the game goes in 20 different directions, it loses impact. When there's one thing that they want to drive home for the impact, it will hit if they do it right. But if they don't, then you have a bunch of different things. I think Witcher's the only good choice-based game where like all of the decisions have different outcomes, and the outcomes are actually good. They're really good.
Yeah, I mean, you need to play more immersive Sims.
I do.
And also Fallout New Vegas, but,
I do.
Yeah, the Witcher's... I haven't played The Witcher 3, so I need to play that, but...
You do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a way to do both. It's basically the very best games will do both. And so I don't feel like I need to make excuses for the game. I know it would be difficult. I know they can't have the whole game branch out in 500 different directions, but at the same time, there is a way to have good writing and to tell a good story, and also to have choice and consequence in a way that's more meaningful than is done here. I mean, even the very old RPGs have done a good job on it. I mean, something has to give, right?
Right.
Like time, money, or production values, or whatever. Like you definitely can't have everything. But I don't think, in terms of this game, I don't think the game does anything like so well that it's like completely excusable.
Nah, it tells a good story, and like that's the whole point of these games. When there's not a good story and there's not good characters, the whole game sucks because it is narrative over gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they didn't break the narrative.
Yes, it would have been like 2 all over again, where it just kind of exists and it doesn't have a shit ton of impact. And I think this, like I said, emotionally, this game definitely reignited me to get back into games, and like I'm ready. I have to get homework done today, but man, I want to play Kena tonight at 11 o'clock. Like that is my goal, because I'm so excited for that game.
In terms of chapter 4, I mean, we've basically, I feel like chapter 4 is like a bit of a weird one because it feels sort of less important than 3 and 5, at least in terms of like less impactful and memorable.
Maybe.
And
Because the very first
we've
choice that you make, because you get arrested at the end of chapter 3, and the very first choice you make is the one where you take you take Pike's fear or you don't. And I am so curious if that has a big decision, because he ends up backing you in a very important situation in chapter 5, and I wonder what happens if he doesn't back you. Like, because he's like one of two people who backs you. Even Ryan turns against you in chapter 5, and like I was so curious. I was like, damn, like what the fuck if the cop is against you? Majority of the people chose to remove his fear. Did you choose to remove his fear, or did you just kind of like, how do you even get out of the police station? I don't even know. That whole
yeah,
situation is gray for me.
I did remove his fear. I mean, I
Yeah.
think yeah. So I guess this is like merging chapter 4 and chapter 5, but that's fine in
That's the
terms
whole
of
thing, yeah. That's this
in
whole
ter-
part. It's really integrated into each other. Every decision here in chapter 4 leads into chapter 5, and it's all like one big blow through, I feel like, because I remember, dude, I didn't even tell you this, but I was up until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. playing this game because I thought we were going to record the Spoilercast that next Thursday. So on Wednesday night, I was like fucking panicking, and like I was like, I got to finish this game. And I messaged someone because I had just finished chapter 3, and I was like, how much is left? And they were like 4.5 to 5 hours, because it's about 2 hours and 2.5 hours per episode. And I'm like, oh no. But they're like, it goes to fast. And it did go fast. It went really, really fast because it's all tied together. And this is like, the plot was given to you in chapter 2. And I'm sorry to interrupt you. But in chapter 2, you get
I haven't even finished my thought yet, and you've just like gone off on like a whole
because it's like
3-minute thing that's not going to end, and then I'm going to be mid-sentence, and it's going to be like no one's going to know what's going on.
But it just like this whole part had me. It was like in chapter 2 they gave the threads. I'm like, oh, this is what the game is going to be about. It's going to be about Typhon, and this is where it finally connects, and you get the flash drive, and you get all of the information that you need, and then you totally get fucked by the police station because you're like, because you have stolen property, so anything you find out is now void, and it's like, oh fuck, we're in a dark situation, we're in a bad situation, and like it all stacks here from chapter 4 and 5. So it's awesome that we're gonna really intertwine these two.
When I did the police station stuff, and so everything is leading up to, as you say, that like when you get out of the mine at the end, and you have to convince everyone that Jed's this not a hero, and is this killer that's partially responsible, and attempted murderer that's partially responsible. When I went there, everyone sided with me except Ryan and Charlotte. Those were the only two that weren't on my side at that point. And yeah, I don't know what happens if you don't take his fear away. I took his fear. I mean, I was like, I'll take all the emotions because I want this to go off the rails. It didn't go off the rails, but I wanted it to go off the rails. So yeah, I don't know what happens in terms of if you don't, because it seems like it is necessary in some sense to get him to keep investigating, and to keep and to keep things open ended, and to let you out of the police station as well, obviously.
Yeah, I have to imagine he's like, if you do not take his fear, then he would stand up during that part and be like, I let you go and I regret it. Like you obviously are not stable. You need to be charged or something, because that's like his whole fear is like he wants to keep it under wraps, and he's like just so afraid. And I freaking like that part a lot, actually. It was a very intense situation to be in the police station and be like, he was sorry for it, but he's like, I'm doing my job. And it's just, you could feel the weight of Typhon at that point. You're like, I'm trapped here. I have to get out somehow. Who did you give the rose to? You gave it to Steph.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I gave it to Ryan.
Yeah, that situation was pretty good, and the festival was charming and quite effective as well. I missed out on the jelly bean achievement. That was the one I was missing, because the problem was so there's this guy trying to guess how many jelly beans are in the jar.
Yes.
And there's a woman, the greatest antagonist of the whole game, Jelly Bean Woman. She's like you go into her thoughts, and she's like, "Mwahaha, I'm gonna win because no one ever gets it right." And so then you can talk to the guy and you can like make a suggestion of how many are in the jar. And I didn't choose anything because I was like, oh, I've probably got to find something that like tells me more information and then I can tell him. So I don't want to like ruin it by telling him something. But then I realized like later when the achievement list went live that like, oh, you can just basically tell him anything, and then you can read her thoughts again, and then she'll be like, oh, I hope they don't guess this number, and then hope they don't go higher or lower, and then you can eventually like triangulate on the number to the guy. So that was kind of annoying because I was like, because of that, I was trying to be more cautious. I ended up locking myself away from that on my first playthrough. So that kind of stung. And yeah, she beat me, the Jelly Bean Woman. She beat me on my first playthrough. No one else in the game beat me. World's most powerful villain, right there.
She did not beat me, thank God. But I loved the festival, and I loved interacting with people, and the emotions ran high during the festival. And I actually found, God, I really can't remember his name. Let me search through this. Yes, there it is. Ducky. Ducky is his name. I met him in the bar before I went upstairs to meet whoever you gave the rose to, and he is so depressed, and it is not a good time for him during the festival because he used to spend it with his lover, who was everything to him. And like going through that whole arc and like listening to the memories that they had there, and like him stewing in the happiness and the sadness that she's gone. Like they had such happy moments inside the bar, and he just is surrounded by all those happy moments that no longer exist because she's gone. And like you have to like really get into his emotions to get him out of it. And then he goes, if you do that, then he goes out to the festival, and like if you read the text messages and the social media website or whatever the fuck they use, everyone is talking about how it's good to see Ducky because he's never come out to the festival ever since his love passed away. And like they're all saying how much fun Ducky was, and and even Ducky's on there saying like he had such a good time. And I'm like, dude, I'm so glad that I saw him in the like stewing in the corner and I helped him out, because that part of the story was hitting really hard for me. I'm like, I can't even imagine what he's going through, but she can, because she can feel what he's going through. And I'm like, this is fucking awesome that I can help this. And that was like a really big highlight during the festival. But the whole point that I wanted to make was that you can leave the festival. Like you can, inside the festival is where you find the Jelly Bean Lady, your nemesis, and then like you can migrate out, and that's where you find Riley at the bus stop. And you can find, this is the exact moment where I got those two together. The friends, they didn't go to the festival because they're like, we are not going on a date, and but we like each other, but we're not really. And so that's whenever I like got to put them together, and I was like, yeah, let's fucking go. And I just like, I went around and I helped everyone. And that's what I love to do during those moments of like open world and choice. I don't go like, they're like, oh yeah, go do this, and you go and do it. And also I like listening to the memories of Steph's band. I think that was really insightful and sad how it all ties back to chapter 2, where Steph chose to stay in the town for Gabe, which I wonder, were they romantically? Maybe it was one-sided. She was in love with Gabe and Gabe was not in love with her. It's very gray in the way that they tell that through the memories. And I mean, I've tried to figure it out, but I don't know. I actually don't know. But she definitely stayed because Gabe, and then Gabe passed, and so she had nothing left, and like her band is gone. And it just seems very sad, the situation that she's in. So it was cool to listen to the memories. Like the memories are the trophies. So if you find them and you get them, then you get the trophies or achievements. And I really enjoyed listening to them and giving feedback, because I think Diane is her name, the evil lady. She had a crush on Pike, and I did not know that until after I beat the game. And that was really fun for me, because that was her weakness, was Pike. So when he backs you up during the chapter 5 intense situation with Jed, she straight up doesn't even say Pike. She says Pike the whole game, but she says Jason, like very seriously to Jason, which Jason Pike is his name. She does not use his first name unless it means something. And I was like, that is fucking epic. that that like you see these interpersonal dynamics that don't happen, like they usually happen behind the scenes, but you get them through the memories. And I just freaking love that stuff. Like if you totally miss that stuff, you don't know about, Steph's band, you don't know about Pike, you don't know. It's just really cool. I think that those were really good trophies to put in, and they were just so easy. So if you attempt, then you learn more about the game after it's over. And I think that that's a really smart trophy list. But back to what I was saying, I gave my rose to Ryan, and I went up on the roof with Ryan, and that was an okay scene, very cheesy. But after he left, I listened to the music up there, and it was more emotional than the entire scene, because we just kind of took a moment that things were good, and I knew that things were going to go bad. And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful scene of like the rotating between the flowers and the lights of the festival, and Alex standing up on the rooftop, just like looking out over the small town. And I was like, this is heaven. And the music slapped there. It was so good. But what did you think about like the whole like segment and like exploring outside of the festival?
Thought it was good. I mean, you've basically covered everything that happened. Don't know what to say.
What happened with Steph on the roof? Is it the same exact thing?
She talked about wanting to like leave the town still, and she's like, it's like awkward because at first it's like she tells you about, like, she's like, oh, I got a surprise to tell you on the roof, and then you go to the roof, and I think you're meant to think that like, oh, she's gonna like, because you read her feelings, and she's like really happy after you give her the flower, and then you go to the roof, and you're sort of half expecting her to like, I don't know, propose to you or something, and then instead she's like, yeah, I'm leaving. She's like, I'm out of it, and then she gets you to decide like where she should go, and so I said she should go to like the bottom of the ocean because I thought that was quite funny because it's like, unrealistic and also kind of like fuck you as well. But then you come up with this like fantasy about her being like a like audio scientist underwater or something, and yeah, and then I think she's like, oh, but I'd want to stay with you and all of this. So then it sort of goes back on track anyway. It's sort of like a fake out in that sense, and then. Yeah, I like the outside stuff. I think it's probably a bit more bare bones and weaker here than it is in chapter 3 and chapter 2, but I still enjoyed it. And yeah, I found, the bus stop, and I found Ducky, and I did all of that stuff as well.
Yeah, as you were hunting, as you were achievement hunting.
Yeah, I explored like every corner of that map, like every time.
The on the roof with Ryan, it is extremely opposite, okay? Ryan is never leaving. He is staying in this town. He has roots here, and he's trying to convince Alex to set roots with him. It's more like the proposal that you talked about. You half expect a proposal going up there, but he is saying like you can choose like a dream. If Alex was to have one after this is all over, like what would she do? And you can choose to work at the Black Lantern, or you can choose like dreaming about working in the record store. And I chose to work at the record store because I just thought that she's more musically inclined, and I think that would just be a better fit. But that's the whole thing of it, and I like how it turned out so heavily because Ryan betrays her after asking to set roots in this town. During that chapter 5, I was like, holy fuck, like he was with his dad to the very end, and I'd like totally understand. I was like, I wouldn't turn on my dad. Like, I love my dad, and he's been in my life way longer than any other person would have been. And I would have definitely been as ignorant and dumb and trust my dad if he had done something that terrible and didn't tell me, And eventually I did forgive Ryan, but it just because I felt that connection with his dad, and I felt so bad. I was like, oh man, that sucks. And he apologizes. He's like, damn, I just was not in a good place, obviously, during that situation. And I really like that. But it really was sad during the festival to talk to Charlotte and find out that when you took her emotions, you took away like her creative ability. And because she's so passionate about everything she does, so when she felt hate, she felt such hatred. And when she feels love, she feels so much love, which is odd because her and Gabe fought a lot apparently at the beginning is what I was saying. Like he's always trying to make up with her, and I just was like, that's not a good relationship. So Charlotte was always disconnected from me, but I just thought that like that decision to help her hurt her, and that one hurt me. I was like, damn, I thought I was doing the right thing, and I didn't. Because you thought it would be funny to go have it go off rails, but I was more thinking like I will sacrifice Alex's emotions and stability for other people's sake to help them, and didn't turn out that way. Didn't turn out that way at all. Yeah, Riley did not go to school for me.
Yeah, I want to talk about chapter 5 now.
Yes, that's where we're headed.
We've already talked about the twist at the end of this chapter.
Yes.
In terms of everything that happens.
Yeah.
So chapter 5 as well, I mentioned that everyone sided with me except Ryan and Charlotte. I like that, again, this is where, like, it seems that your relationships with the side characters can partially determine if they believe you and if they side with you, and I think that's pretty good because it is, like, an indication of some decisions and relationships actually mattering, and I think it's executed well. I think, again, it's another formulaic thing, right? All these adventure games, these narrative adventure games do this kind of thing when they get everyone in a big room at the end and they say, like, your relationship with this guy and this guy that you met for 5 minutes and this guy that you totally forgot about, and it all sort of matters, but not really. It matters like 1% or something. So there's that aspect to it, and I've seen it all the time. But I think it's executed well, and the characters are good, so it works well enough for the game. I'm surprised to hear it's interesting that the stuff with Ryan, even if you get into a relationship with him, he doesn't believe you, because he didn't believe me for me, but I was like, oh, well, who cares? I rejected this guy. This guy's a bozo. Who cares? He's always going to do this for me. So it's interesting that he also did it for you, which I didn't know about. I think as well, the decision at the end where you have to decide whether you're leaving the town or not, it feels a bit forced. I mean, I understand the idea of like you've finally concluded the unfinished business. You've like moved away from the mystery. You've solved it. But I didn't really, for me, I mean, I guess it was signaled in chapter 4 in terms of the conversation with Steph, but I didn't really feel like the game was leading to that decision to leave the town or not. And it's a bit of an unusual decision, because if there's ever a sequel or anything, the writers are going to have to decide on one or the other being canon, or they'll have to do some, like, again, some stupid thing where the decision doesn't matter, because they'll be like, oh, well, even if you decided to leave, it turns out that, all travel is banned or something, or like something, a volcano erupted and it blocked your path out of the town or something. Like they're going to have to do something that makes it so that the if there's a sequel, the decision doesn't actually matter, and you're in the
they already do that.
Place.
They have already done that. They've already decided to choose the canon endings and things like that, because when you play 2, right, there's a trailer park towards the end where you see Chloe and Max, and that means that Chloe is alive and the city is or the town is destroyed.
Yeah,
they're on the road. So
yeah, in the first game, I think the final decision made more sense, but in this game, I'm sort of like, I don't know if it really needed that final decision. I mean, it was maybe set up a little in chapter 4, but it sort of it felt a bit out of nowhere and a bit sudden, and also it's something that the writers are going to have to, they're going to have to completely nullify it one way or the other by, a sequel if it happens. Anyway, although I kind of get the feeling a sequel might not happen because the game doesn't seem to be selling very well, but it's done pretty well critically, so, who knows?
Yeah. I actually want to run through these real quick, just because I think it's interesting how, well, let me start with, I think the end decision was the right decision. I think that there was nowhere else to put anything. Like, I think it could have just ended, but then it would have been like, well, what is she going to do now? But it's like, you choose what she's going to do. Like, what else do you do? There's nothing left to do whenever you solve the mystery and everything is over. So I think that just deciding to leave or to stay is just the default option. That's what you do in life. You decide what you're going to do next. And I think that was just fine there. But I want to talk about...
Yeah, but I don't know if that works for me, because it's like, you decide a lot of things in life, right? You decide what you're gonna do for a job. You decide what, like why not those, right? Like, yeah, I get what you mean, but
Well,
like,
that's
there's
that's
no,
kind of what you choose with that situation. Her job
yeah, but
is if she goes on the road, she's going to play music. If she stays in town, she's got to work in the town and continue to.
yeah, yeah, but the story has to end somewhere. Like you're not carrying on with her until she dies, right? Like you,
Right.
so at that point, like there's obviously going to be more decisions to be made at that point. I guess what I mean is I didn't feel like it was adequately set up for me, where there was like this big lingering question mark that had to be answered by me, the player, in terms of that sense. Like for me, my investment was about Gabe, right, and that stuff was solved. So I'm like, it's fine. Like, or you can take the control away from me at that point, because again, if there's a sequel, they're going to have to. If there's an actual canonical ending, they're going to have to. Where it's like you can already just maybe have it as a consequence for how I talk to Steph about leaving or something, but already establish it. Like already just have it happen. Don't make me choose for something that doesn't matter and feels out of place.
Yeah, I think we might just have to agree to disagree here because I mean, obviously, I'm not sitting down to try to write this, but like in this situation, I agree with you in the terms that like just end it there, but how? You're gonna sum up like every relationship you have in the city and then just let her go? Like I just don't understand how you could just end it. And I think that giving the option of what she's gonna do next is just a good way to definitively end it. And then yes, they can rewrite that. They can choose which one was canon. They can do whatever they want with that, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. Again, you said that a lot of decisions don't matter, and that's okay in this game because there's so much more to this game than just how your fit decision was affecting the outcome. Because the outcome to me was like a really great story told, and I'm okay with that. Now, do
Yeah, I think I just disagree in the sense that to me, it's less definitive by having that decision because you've now created a new branch and it's not been resolved. So it's sort of like, is it like a sequel bait or is it like 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 they've almost done like the anti-closure in the sense of they've like opened it back up again and they've given the player a choice, which is very empowering. If I believed that the choices were meaningful,
yeah.
it would be anyway. But yeah, I mean, I can understand what you mean, but yeah, we just won't agree.
Yeah, and that's okay. It's okay to do that. But I wanted back to what I was saying before the agree to disagree argument. I wanted to talk about each person that backed and didn't back me. And I know that it doesn't matter that much, but I think that ours are very different because of the decisions we made, and that is where all of the decisions that don't matter do come into play. So, and I'll just through them real fast, and maybe you can, if you remember yours, you can. But Ducky sided with Alex, Pike sided with Alex, Eleanor sided with Alex, Charlotte did not. Ryan did not, and that's really everyone. Like I basically had two people who didn't agree, and that was I think was that for you too, Charlotte and
Yeah,
Ryan.
it was exactly the same for me.
That's
Yeah,
crazy. I thought Riley didn't. I think Riley. Yeah, no, Eleanor offered to get. Oh yeah, she did not. Eleanor did not help. She
Eleanor did for me.
she did not. She said she would get Alex help because she's not right. Alex is not right.
Yeah, I bet that frustrated you because you felt like you messed up her
Her arc.
storyline
I
as well.
did. Yeah. That's what I was wanting to talk about. Was like she was not with me, but that's because I didn't tell her about Gabe and because Riley found out and stayed to help, and that's how that goes. Because I fucked it up, but that's my story. So that's really sad. But yeah, I chose to stay in Haven Springs and date Ryan. That was the ending for me.
Yeah, I also chose to stay and then
And Steph leave.
yes, get with Steph. Yeah,
Oh, she
I
did
think
stay?
I think she stayed. Um,
Whoa.
yeah, I mean she sided with me in the final thing as well. I think she stayed. I'm not 100% sure to be honest, but I remember it being it was a whole happy vibe thing.
I,
So
I kind of wanted my fantasy. I love Steph so much. She's one of my favorites. I kept her open so that I could have her. No, I'm just kidding. I I think that it would have been cool if Steph went off on her own and
Yeah,
then
I'm not sure if it was like implied that she was going to go, but I'm not sure if she did go or if she stayed. Like it was like something where it's like, oh, you'll. But basically, the decision to go was like with like the ghost of Gabe, not with Steph, and so
yeah.
then it was like when when I talked to her in chapter 4, it was like, oh, I could go, but I'll visit, and then it's like, oh, but I love you, and blah blah blah. Like it was like it was resolved, but it also felt kind of unresolved in that sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I just want her to be off on her own and maybe even appear in another game. Like that is what I'd be okay with. Like have Steph be this through line in this Life is Strange games. Like all the powers revolve around her. Not like she never gets the powers, but she's been around them. You know what I mean? And so it's really cool. And that's actually something that I didn't mention, but I thought was going to happen. I thought the very first time you steal anger from Charlotte, I thought that I was like, oh no, we're gonna have Life is Strange 1 problems where using your power causes problems in the real world, and it was more internal than that when you stole somebody else's emotions, and that was something that Alex had to deal with. But I thought it was gonna be more like a storm is coming or like not. I guess if they did a storm is coming, it would have been like, oh, they copped out. It's real easy for them to do that, but maybe like an avalanche or something because it's at the base of the mountain. You know what I mean? So I think it would have been. That's what I thought was happening, and it didn't. So you went with chaos, and I was going for doing the right thing, using the powers, but overusing them would be able or like would have a bad outcome, and that never happened. And I really did want to see Steph off on another game because I think that she's an awesome character. She's the best character probably in this game. But
Well, I want a game with the gnome, so
yeah,
he should get his own game before anyone else.
I agree. But I think that's it, dude. There's nothing left really to discuss.
Yeah, I've got nothing else. I've given
How early did you know that Jed was going to be the bad guy?
not at all early. It was fairly short. I mean, when he was like taking you out to the mine, I was like, okay, something's going on here. But it wasn't really until it happened, and I sort of put it together as you're meant to put it together. I think so. It worked for me.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I actually thought that maybe Diane would come there and be like insane, maybe be the one with the gun, and she was going to be like, I work for this company. I'm not going down. I have we read the emails. We saw the shit that she was going through. She was like, I saved myself. You two are not going to fuck it up. And like, that's what I thought was going to happen. But then Jed turns and I was like, fuck. I did not see that coming at all. Like, I definitely from the very beginning thought it was going to be Diane. Maybe that was their intentions, but they got me. They got me because I did not see that coming. But let's go ahead and end it. Talk about our trophy and achievement of the week. How about you go first this week? I think I go first most weeks.
Okay. Yeah, so mine isn't an actual, like, it's not one achievement, but I'm interested in playing Curse of the Dead Gods, which is a roguelike. It's similar to Hades in terms of combat. There's like more to do with like curses and like making your run like more powerful but more dangerous as well, it seems. So it seems like an interesting game. And I like the achievement list because all of the achievements are a single word. Like, it's like initiation, strength, toughness, cruelty, nobility, invention, vanity, awareness, depravity, avidity, deception. Like all the achievements are just one word, which I find it quite cool when an achievement list or a trophy list has this like synergy or like a consistency in terms of the naming schemes. Sometimes you might get like achievements that rhyme with each other or they like follow on from each other. So this felt like an opportunity when I saw that. I was thinking, I want to just, give that a shout out of like, games that have an achievement list where like all the achievements follow a theme or follow some setting or follow off from each other. I think that's a really cool thing that some achievement list writers do.
All right, man. 2021, the year of roguelikes for you. You really have played a lot this year.
I mean, I've played FTL, I've played Binding of Isaac, I've played Enter the Gungeon, I've played Spelunky, I've played Dead Cells. I was always quite into the genre, so yeah.
Yeah, so this year it's a big one for you. The trophy that I chose this week was something I was just like, oh, hey, this is kind of on the new list. It's Lost Judgment. And I was like, oh, let's look at these trophies. And I found a trophy that was called Skate or Die. And it's where you obtain all the skateboards in the game. And I didn't even know that there were skateboards. It's like a Yakuza game, so I didn't even know that. And I was like, I'm a big skater. I love skating. I have 3 boards in my trunk just in case like I pull up to a spot or I'm near a skate park and I can just go and kind of do my own thing. And so I've always loved skating, and I saw Skate or Die and I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That'd be a trophy that I would like to have. That's for sure. That's for sure. And do you have any final thoughts, AJ?
No, I mean, well, for Lost Judgment, in terms of, yeah, I've heard that game, like the Yakuza games, it has just so many mini games and different like things to try out. So yeah, I think it's the first time there's been like a skateboarding dynamic to it. So that'll be interesting to check out. In
All
terms of
right.
final thoughts, I mean, God, I'm glad I liked Life is Strange, but I'm glad I don't have to think about it as actively as I have done today and in the lead up to this episode.
I
I'm
think
glad it's over.
I'm not glad it's over. I loved the game and I love the conversation around the game, and I hope and I look forward to like talking to other people about it. And yes, the decisions weren't as impactful as maybe we'd like, but I still think that the emotional impact of each decision is what really matters. And I really
I'm just glad I'm free. Okay, I'm just glad I'm free from the community. I'm free from all of it. It's done.
dude,
My
I'm gonna
watch
bring it
is
up.
over.
It's my turn to bring it up every podcast. Like I'm just gonna make sure I'm gonna mention Life is Strange True Colors because I'm feeling good, and Life is Strange made me feel good.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm giving you shit. But that's it for us. Thanks for listening. Peace out. Happy hunting.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to Complete Edition. If you like the content, consider supporting us on patreon.com/completion club. If you have any questions or would like to reach us, email completionclub@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Complete Edition.